Now everything's good. Not to lore yet, but soon. Hope everything. Wait, does that work? Okay, it does work. Okay. Practice range. What weapon, what peon should we use today? We need to level up. Gun's level 30, so let's start with this. That means we're playing support today. Deployable cover. Oh man, dude, this is so far away. Smoke assist 25. That is just not fun. Simply not fun. Whatever. $19.11. Added another revolver. So they added a Glock, basically. 5.7. And I don't know what this is. But probably a 9mm, right? So two 9mm, a 5.7, 45, 44, and probably 3.57? Is that correct? Why not the Deagle? So many cool things. Whatever. Everything should be okay. Is there any reason to tap fire this? Even at long range? Like, I don't think so, right? I don't think there's a single reason to tap fire that. Even at long range. Where's the new map? Eastwood? New map is Eastwood. And
my daughter is being
St. Jude ad.
Frozen jewel in the void, its surface carved by millennia of howling winds that sculpted crystalline spires from compressed snow and ancient permafrost. This harsh realm, locked in perpetual winter beneath pale suns, would forge one of the Emperor's most steadfast sons. Here, among the ice-bound fortress cities and the proud warrior houses that ruled them, Rogal Dorn would learn the virtues that would define his character. Absolute duty, unshakable resolve, and an iron discipline that would make him the most trusted of all the Primarchs. The infant Primarch's arrival on the Ridge followed the same mysterious pattern that scattered his brothers across the galaxy. Cast through the warp by the machinations of the Chaos Gods, a child who would become known as Rogal Dorn materialized on this frozen world far from terror. Unlike some of his brothers who faced immediate peril upon their arrival, Dorn was discovered by the noble house of Inwit's ruling family.
I'll run.
The circumstances of his discovery spoke to the character he would develop, found not as a feral child or conquering warrior, but as an infant taken in by duty-bound nobles who recognized something extraordinary in the golden-haired child. The aged patriarch of the ruling house adopted the foundling as his own. The old man possessed the weathered dignity common to those who ruled harsh worlds, his face bearing the lines carved by decades of making difficult decisions in the name of his people's survival. Under his guidance, young Dorn learned the fundamental principles that would govern his entire existence. The fortress palaces of Inwit were not places of luxury, but bastions of purpose, their halls echoing with the measured footsteps of guards and the quiet discussions of administrators who understood that their world's survival depended on constant vigilance and preparation. The culture of Inwit shaped Dorn's developing mind with its emphasis on collective responsibility and personal sacrifice. The planet's harsh climate demanded cooperation and planning on a scale that lesser worlds never required. Cities existed as self-contained ecosystems, their walls not merely defensive barriers, but
It's here
essential
somewhere.
shields against the killing cold that could claim entire populations if preparations faltered. In this environment, young Dorn absorbed lessons about the weight of leadership and the absolute necessity of reliability. When someone on Inwit gave their word, lives depended on that promise being kept. As Dorn matured, his extraordinary nature
What is this?
became increasingly apparent.
Oh yeah,
His
I just
physical growth
realized.
far exceeded
There's
that of
no,
normal
like,
humans.
OP guns
His
around
golden
anymore.
hair and noble bearing marking him as something beyond mortal
Also, why
ken.
is my lane
More significantly, his mind demonstrated an intuitive grasp of defensive strategy and organizational logistics that impressed even the veteran commanders of Inwit's military forces.
Oh, are we serious?
The young Primarch possessed an almost supernatural ability to assess threats and
Three dudes
coordinate
over the hill.
responses, seeing patterns in enemy movements and weaknesses in fortifications that escaped the notice of experienced officers. The transition from adopted grandson to planetary ruler occurred through a combination of demonstrated competence and inevitable recognition of his superior abilities. The grandfather, wise enough to recognize that his adopted heir possessed capabilities that transcended normal human limitations, gradually transferred authority to Dorn. This process unfolded
like
not
this
through
hill. This
dramatic
is a bad
conquest
hill.
or political maneuver,
This is a bad,
but
bad
through the
hill.
quiet
What
acknowledgement
the?
that Dorn's judgment consistently
a
proved superior to
horrendous
that of
hill.
any other leader on the planet. Under Dorn's leadership,
Absolutely
Inwit
horrendous.
experienced a renaissance of defensive architecture and military organization. The Primarch's mind, already showing the systematic approach that would later make him the master of fortification throughout the galaxy, redesigned the planet's defenses with methodical precision. He understood that true security came not from individual strongholds, but from integrated defensive networks where each element supported the others. Fortress cities were connected by underground transit systems that allowed rapid redeployment of forces,
Need to
while
fix
communication networks ensured that threats could be identified and countered before they developed into existential dangers. The psychological profile that emerged during these formative years would define Dorn throughout his service to the Emperor and the Imperium. His stoicism was not the cold indifference sometimes attributed to him by those who knew him only by reputation, but rather a deliberate emotional discipline that allowed him to function effectively under the enormous pressures of command. Dorn understood that leaders could not afford the luxury of emotional responses when lives hung in the balance. This self-control manifested in his measured speech patterns, his careful consideration of options before making decisions, and his absolute refusal to make promises he could not keep. His sense of duty transcended mere obedience to authority, representing instead a philosophical commitment to the greater good that superseded personal desires or ambitions. Dorn viewed leadership not as a privilege to be enjoyed, but as a burden to be borne for the benefit of those under his protection. This perspective shaped his approach to every aspect of governance and military command, from the design of defensive positions to the allocation of resources during times of scarcity. The discovery of Inwit by the Emperor's expanding Great Crusade marked a pivotal moment not only in Dorn's personal history, but in the broader narrative of human reunification. When the Emperor's expedition fleet translated from the warp at the edge of the Inwit system, they encountered not a primitive world ripe for conquest, but a highly organized civilization under the leadership of one of the lost primaries. The initial contact between father and son carried none of the drama that marked some similar reunions. No battles to be fought, no tyrants to be overthrown, simply the meeting of two beings who recognized their shared purpose immediately. The Emperor's recognition of Dorn was instantaneous and complete. Here was a son who had not only survived his separation, but had thrived, developing exactly the qualities that the Emperor had intended to instill in his creative generals. Dorn's approach to leadership, his systematic mind, and his unwavering commitment to duty aligned perfectly with the Emperor's vision for the reconquest of the galaxy. More than simple compatibility, however, the Emperor perceived in Dorn a reliability that would prove invaluable in the trials ahead. Dorn's integration into the Great Crusade proceeded with characteristic efficiency. The 7th Legion, which had fought with distinction under the temporary command of Terran officers, welcomed their Primarch with the disciplined enthusiasm typical of Astartes receiving their Gene Father. The Legion's existing culture of methodical warfare and defensive expertise meshed seamlessly with Dorn's strategic preferences, creating a unified force that would become synonymous with impregnability and tactical precision. The epithet Praetorian of Terra emerged from Dorn's unique position within the Emperor's inner circle. Unlike some of his brothers who excelled in specific aspects of warfare or governance, Dorn demonstrated a comprehensive competence that made him invaluable as a guardian of the most critical imperial interests. The title carried implications beyond mere military command, encompassing his role as the Emperor's most trusted defender and the guardian of humanity's seat of power. This designation reflected not only Dorn's tactical brilliance, but also his absolute psychological reliability. The Emperor, who possessed an understanding of human nature that transcended normal comprehension, recognized in Dorn a mind incapable of betrayal or self-serving ambition. Where other Primarchs might be swayed by personal glory, philosophical disagreements, or the corrupting whispers of chaos, Dorn's character provided an unshakable foundation of loyalty that could be relied upon regardless of circumstances. The significance of this trust extended far beyond personal preference. Terra represented the heart of the growing Imperium, the world from which humanity's expansion across the galaxy was coordinated and controlled. Its defense required not merely military skill, but also the kind of systematic thinking that could coordinate vast defensive networks across multiple star systems. Dorn's mind, trained on the harsh lessons of Inwit and refined through his experiences in the Great Crusade, proved uniquely suited to this monumental responsibility. The transformation of Rogal Dorn from planetary ruler to master of siege warfare began with his first exposure to the broader conflicts of the Great Crusade, where many Primarchs demonstrated immediate prowess in mobile warfare or devastating assaults. Dorn's tactical genius manifested in his ability to read terrain, understand defensive positions, and conceptualize fortifications that could withstand any assault. His mind processed battlefield topography like a three-dimensional puzzle, instantly identifying choke points, fields of fire, and structural weaknesses that could be exploited or reinforced. This innate understanding of defensive architecture went beyond mere military engineering. Dorn possessed an intuitive grasp of how human psychology interacted with physical structures, recognizing that the most effective fortifications served dual purposes as both practical defensive positions and psychological bulwarks that inspired confidence in defenders while intimidating attackers. His early designs incorporated these principles, creating strong forts that felt as impregnable as they actually were.
Unlucky.
The Primarch's approach to fortification differed fundamentally from conventional military engineering in its emphasis on integrated systems rather than isolated strongholds. Where traditional fortress designers focused on individual structures, Dorn
How is that
conceived
not
of entire regions as
Absolutely.
defensive networks. His plans incorporated multiple layers of defense, each designed to channel enemy forces into predetermined killing zones, while providing defenders with maximum flexibility for counterattacks and tactical withdrawals. During the early campaigns of the 7th Legion under Dorn's command, his strategic philosophy crystallized around 3 core principles that would define his approach to warfare throughout the Great Crusade. Preparation formed the foundation of his tactical thinking, reflecting lessons learned on enriched where inadequate planning meant death for entire communities. Dorn insisted on exhaustive reconnaissance, detailed intelligence gathering, and comprehensive logistical planning before committing forces to any engagement. Discipline represented the second pillar of his strategic framework. Primarch understood that the most sophisticated plans meant nothing without troops capable of executing under extreme pressure. His training regimens for the 7th Legion emphasized not just physical conditions and weapon proficiency, but also the mental fortitude required to maintain formation, follow orders, and facing overwhelming odds. This discipline extended beyond individual soldiers to encompass entire command structures. Officers trained to maintain clear communication channels and coordinate complex maneuvers even when communication systems failed. Methodical planning included Dorn's strategic thinking. Primarch's mind naturally gravitated towards systematic approaches that accounted for multiple contingencies and maintained operational flexibility. His battle plans resembled architectural blueprints in their precision, every element serving multiple purposes and backup systems built into every critical function. This methodical approach sometimes frustrated more impulsive commanders who preferred rapid, decisive actions, but Dorn's results consistently vindicated his patient, thorough methodology. The first major fortification project that demonstrated Dorn's extraordinary capabilities was the reinforcement of the Saturnine Gate complex during the consolidation of the Sol system. The existing defensive installations, built during the Age of Strife, represented competent engineering, but lacked the integrated design philosophy that Dorn brought to defensive architecture. His modifications transformed a collection of individual strongholds into a unified defensive network that could coordinate fire patterns, share sensor data, and redistribute forces based on real-time threat assessments. The Saturnine Gate project established patterns that would characterize all of Dorn's subsequent fortification.
I used to lack confidence until I shopped for a used car with Carfax. With Carfax, I was able to... I saw all the facts, like millions of cars, reported vehicle histories, and found the best values. Thanks to Carfax, I have the confidence to shop like a pro. A pro car shopper who feels like a winning ping pong champion. A ping pong champ whose legendary story is now a blockbuster movie. Starring me, Little Miss Confident. Yeah! Sorry, you get it. Shop theonlycarfax.com.
Rather than simply adding more weapons or thicker walls, he redesigned the fundamental layout to maximize defensive efficiency while minimizing resource requirements.
There's another one.
His plans incorporated redundant systems that ensured continued operation even if primary systems failed, along with concealed positions that could surprise attackers who believed they had identified all defensive emplacements. As the Great Crusade expanded beyond the Sol system, Dorn's reputation as a master of defensive warfare spread throughout the growing Imperium. Worlds that had resisted Imperial compliance for decades found themselves facing siege techniques that systematically dismantled their defenses through careful application of engineering expertise rather than brute force. The Primarch's approach to siege warfare emphasized patience and precision, identifying the critical structural or logistical elements that sustained enemy resistance, and then methodically eliminating them. The fortress world of Sebastus became one of Dorn's most celebrated siege victories, demonstrating his ability to combine traditional military tactics with innovative engineering solutions. The planet's defenders had spent centuries perfecting their defensive position,
He's right there, isn't he?
creating a network of underground bunkers
Ain't he
and
right
surface
here?
strongholds
Am I
that
crazy?
had repelled multiple invasion attempts. Rather
right
than
behind you,
launching
my guy.
costly frontal assaults, Dorn spent months studying the fortress system, identifying the underground water sources and power generation facilities that sustained the defensive network. His solution involved a combination of precision orbital bombardment and specialized engineering units that sealed critical supply tunnels while simultaneously constructing counter-fortifications that denied the defenders their secured fields of fire. The siege concluded not with a dramatic final assault, but with the systematic collapse of the defensive network as its supporting infrastructure failed. The defenders, faced with the choice between surrender and slow starvation, chose to yield to Imperial forces that demonstrated the futility of continued resistance. Sebastus' campaign illustrated Dorn's understanding that effective siege warfare required more than military force. His approach integrated logistics, engineering, intelligence gathering, and psychological warfare into comprehensive strategies that addressed every aspect of sustained military operations. This holistic perspective distinguished him from commanders who relied primarily on superior firepower or numerical advantages to overcome defensive positions. Dorn's growing expertise in fortification and siege warfare inevitably brought him into contact with Rogal, the Primarch of the 4th Legion, whose own reputation centered on his mastery of siege techniques and defensive engineering. The relationship between these two Primarchs represented one of the most complex dynamics within the Brotherhood of Gene Sons, characterized by mutual respect for each other's abilities, combined with fundamental
You guys have
philosophical disagreements
Might
about
not
the
be fun
nature and purpose
to
of
watch
warfare. Rabo approached siege warfare as a problem to be solved through the application of overwhelming force and superior
Oh,
technology.
what the?
His strategies typically involved massive artillery bombardments, mechanized assaults, and the systematic destruction of enemy positions through sustained firepower. The Iron Warriors under his command became synonymous with grinding, attritional campaigns that achieved victory through the methodical application of superior resources and technological advantages. Dorn's methodology differed substantially from his brother's approach, emphasizing efficiency and precision over raw destruction.
Oh, that's scary.
Where Rabo might deploy massive siege guns to reduce enemy fortifications to rubble, Dorn preferred to identify specific structural weaknesses that could be exploited with minimal expenditure of resources.
Highly advanced.
This philosophical difference reflected deeper disagreements about the nature of warfare and the responsibilities of military command. The contrast between their approaches became apparent during joint operations where both Primarchs participated in the same campaigns. Rabo's forces would establish massive siege works and begin systematic bombardment of enemy positions, while Dorn's troops would conduct detailed reconnaissance and prepare precision strikes against critical targets. The Iron Warriors achieved their objectives through sustained pressure and overwhelming firepower, while the Imperial Fists accomplished similar goals through careful planning and surgical application of force. These tactical differences extended to their approaches to fortification construction. Rabo's defensive works emphasized massive walls, overlapping fields of fire, and the integration of heavy weapons systems that could engage enemies at maximum range. His fortresses resembled mechanical constructions, with every element designed for maximum efficiency and minimal aesthetic consideration. The Iron Warriors built structures that functioned perfectly, but possessed an austere, utilitarian appearance that reflected their creators' focus on practical effectiveness. Dorn's fortifications, while equally effective from a defensive standpoint, incorporated elements that acknowledged the human factors involved in sustained defensive operations. His designs included spaces for rest and recuperation, considered the psychological effects of extended siege conditions on defenders, and integrated architectural elements that maintained morale during prolonged conflicts. The Imperial Fists built fortresses that served as homes for their garrisons, as well as military installations, recognizing that effective defense required sustained human commitment over extended periods. The rivalry between Dorn and Rabo never descended into open hostility, but it created a persistent tension that influenced both Primarchs throughout the Great Crusade. Each recognized the other's competence while disagreeing with his methods, leading to a complex relationship characterized by professional respect and personal frustration. Their interactions during joint planning sessions often involved lengthy debates about optimal approaches to specific tactical challenges, with each Primarch defending his methodology while acknowledging the effectiveness of his brother's alternative approach.
Dude.
This dynamic proved
Get me,
beneficial
man,
to the
please.
overall conduct of the Great Crusade, as the competition between the two siege specialists drove continuous innovation in both offensive and defensive techniques. Fortification designs improved as each Primarch sought to create structures that could withstand his brother's siege methods, while siege techniques evolved to overcome increasingly sophisticated defensive systems. The rivalry pushed both legions to higher levels of performance and encouraged the development of new technologies and tactics that benefited the entire Imperial war effort. The fortress complexes that Dorn constructed during the Great Crusade became legendary throughout the expanding Imperium, serving as both practical military installations and symbols of Imperial power.
Oh, that's so
Each major
unlucky, bro.
fortification
So
project
unlucky.
incorporated lessons
I freaking
learned from
peaked an
previous
armored car.
constructions, while adapting to the specific requirements of its strategic location and tactical purpose. The Primarch's systematic approach to defensive architecture created a standardized methodology that could be applied across diverse planetary environments and threat scenarios. The 7th Legion existed for decades before their reunion with their Primarch, forged in the genie laboratories of Terra during the earliest phases of the Emperor's grand design. Like their brother legions, the Imperial Fists began as a collection of Terran recruits drawn from the warrior cultures that had survived the Age of Strife.
Take what you can carry!
The initial cadre came primarily from Himalaysian tribes and the techno-barbarian clans of the Urals, hardy mountain peoples with a cultural emphasis on endurance and defensive warfare, aligned naturally with the genetic predispositions encoded in the Primarch's gene seed. These early Imperial Fists displayed characteristics that would later be recognized as expressions of Rogal Dorn's genetic legacy, though none understood the connection. The Legionaries demonstrated exceptional patience in siege operations, an intuitive grasp of defensive positioning, and a methodical approach to problem solving that set them apart from their more impulsive brother legions. Their combat doctrine evolved organically around these strengths, emphasizing disciplined formations, coordinated fire support, and the systematic reduction of enemy strong points through careful application of concentrated force. The Legion's early campaigns during the Unification Wars established patterns that would persist throughout their history, while other legions gained renown for lightning assaults or devastating breakthrough attacks. The 7th Legion built their reputation on their ability to take and hold critical positions against overwhelming odds. Their commanders learned to identify the key terrain features that controlled entire battlefields, deploying their forces to maximum advantage while denying enemies the opportunity to exploit tactical weaknesses. Under the temporary command of Terran officers appointed by the Emperor, the 7th Legion developed a culture that prized reliability above individual heroics. Their training emphasized collective achievement over personal glory, creating units that functioned as integrated systems rather than collections of individual warriors. This approach proved particularly effective during the protracted campaigns that characterized the later phases of Terran unification, where sustained operations required troops capable of maintaining effectiveness over extended periods without constant reinforcement or resupply. The Legion's organizational structure during this pre-Primarch period reflected their tactical preferences and operational requirements. Companies were organized around defensive specializations, with dedicated units for siege warfare, fortification construction, and sustained defensive operations. Each company maintained its own engineering specialists, communications teams, and logistical support elements, creating self-sufficient formations capable of independent operation when strategic requirements demanded dispersed deployment. The arrival of Rogal Dorn transformed the 7th Legion from competent military formation into one of the most formidable forces in the Imperial arsenal. The Primarch's integration with his Gene sons proceeded smoothly, facilitated by the natural compatibility between his strategic philosophy and the tactical doctrines they had already developed. Rather than imposing wholesale changes in the Legion's existing structure, Dorn refined and enhanced their capabilities, while introducing elements of in-wit military culture that complemented their established strengths. The most significant change involved the systematic incorporation of in-wit defensive techniques and organizational principles into
I
Legion
simply
doctrine.
was not expecting
The
that.
Ice World's harsh environment had produced military traditions that emphasized preparation, redundancy, and coordinated response to multiple simultaneous threats.
So unexpected.
These concepts translated directly to the challenges of interstellar warfare, where Imperial Fist's formations might face diverse enemy forces equipped with unknown technologies and operating under alien tactical doctrines. Dorn restructured the Legion's command hierarchy to reflect in-wit principles of distributed authority and mutual
all over
support.
this hill. I hate this hill. This
Senior
hill's the worst.
officers received expanded autonomy to respond to local
I
tactical
don't know what it is
situations
about that hill, but that hill
while
sucks.
remaining integrated within larger strategic frameworks. This approach allowed individual commanders to exploit opportunities or respond to threats without waiting for centralized direction, while ensuring that their actions supported overall operational objectives rather than conflicting with parallel efforts by adjacent units.
Very funny.
The Primarch also introduced
I also
in-wit
think
concepts of collective responsibility that transformed the Legions
Ain't
into
no way
a
this
culture.
is not even good.
Rather than operating as traditional military hierarchies, where orders flowed down,
I don't know where they are.
Imperial Fist's units developed lateral communication networks that allowed rapid information sharing and coordinated responses across multiple
My face stinks for you. My name is revived.
Sergeants communicated directly with their counterparts in adjacent squads.
They're
Company commanders coordinated with their peers in other
This is
formations.
so annoying.
And individual legionaries
Get me.
took personal responsibility for maintaining awareness of broader tactical
Okay,
situations
just respond. Just respond.
beyond their
Just
immediate
respond really
assignments.
fast.
These organizations reflected Dorn's understanding that effective military operations required more than simple obedience to orders. The complexity of interstellar warfare demanded troops capable of independent judgment and initiative, particularly during extended campaigns where communication delays or equipment failures might isolate units from higher command authority. The Imperial Fists learned to function as thinking soldiers rather than merely disciplined executors of predetermined plans. The Legion's recruitment practices evolved significantly under Dorn's guidance, expanding beyond their traditional Terran sources to include candidates from worlds that demonstrated compatible cultural values and military traditions. The Primarch established recruitment stations on fortress worlds throughout the expanding Imperium, seeking young men whose backgrounds emphasized duty, discipline, and collective responsibility over individual achievement or personal glory. In-wit itself became a primary source of new recruits,
that is not
with the
the right
planet's warrior houses
I
viewing
meant
service
to
in the
throw down
Imperial
smoke
Fists
and
as
not
the
knife
highest
the
honor
ground.
their sons could achieve. The Ice World's military academies adapted their curricula to prepare candidates for Legion selection, emphasizing technical skills and psychological attributes that Astartes transformation required. These in-wit recruits
let
brought
my teammates
cultural
go on.
perspectives that reinforced the Legion's existing values, while adding new capabilities in areas such as
Spawn on the
void
trees.
warfare and extreme environment operations.
Big
The
boys.
selection process for Imperial Fists recruits reflected Dorn's systematic approach to all aspects of Legion management. Rather than relying primarily on physical testing or combat trials, the Legion developed comprehensive evaluation procedures that assessed candidates' psychological resilience, intellectual capacity, and cultural compatibility with existing unit dynamics. Potential recruits underwent extended observation periods where their responses to stress, authority, and collective responsibility
quite
could be
surprising to
evaluated
my
under
brain.
controlled conditions. Successful candidates entered training programs that emphasized technical competence alongside
I'd say
traditional martial
unfortunately
skills.
they're so good.
Imperial Fist's neophytes learned engineering principles, communications procedures, and logistical management in addition to weapons handling and close combat techniques. This broad-based education reflected Dorn's recognition that modern warfare required soldiers capable of functioning in multiple roles rather than specialists limited to narrow areas of activity. The Legion's combat doctrine under Dorn's leadership crystallized around the concept of integrated defensive operations supported by precision defensive capabilities. Rather than viewing attack and defense as separate tactical approaches, the Imperial Fists developed techniques that seamlessly combined both elements within unified operational frameworks. Their preferred battle plans involved establishing strong defensive positions that channeled enemy forces into predetermined engagement zones while maintaining offensive capabilities that could exploit tactical opportunities or respond to changing battlefield conditions. This integrated approach distinguished the Imperial Fists from legions that specialized primarily in either offensive or defensive operations. Where other formations might excel at rapid assault or stubborn defense, the 7th Legion developed capabilities that allowed them to transition fluidly between different tactical modes based on evolving battlefield requirements. Their commanders learned to read combat situations dynamically, adjusting their approach in real time, rather than committing to predetermined tactical frameworks that might become obsolete as circumstances changed. The Legion's heavy weapons specialists received particular emphasis in Dorn's reorganization, reflecting his understanding of firepower's critical role in both offensive and defensive operations. Imperial Fist Devastator squads trained extensively with siege equipment, learning to operate everything from portable las cannons to massive artillery pieces that could breach fortress walls or provide long-range fire support for advancing infantry. These specialists developed expertise in target identification and fire coordination that allowed them to maximize the effectiveness of available firepower while minimizing ammunition consumption and collateral damage. Engineering capabilities became another hallmark of the Reformed Legion. Every company maintained dedicated construction and demolition specialists capable of rapid fortification or obstacle clearance. These legionaries learned to work with both Imperial construction equipment and improvised materials, creating defensive positions from whatever resources were available on board. Their training included structural analysis, explosives handling, and battlefield engineering that allowed them to modify terrain features to support tactical operations. The Legion's officer corps reflected Dorn's emphasis on competence and reliability over political considerations or personal charisma. Promotions within the Imperial Fists hierarchy depended on demonstrated ability to plan and execute complex operations, while maintaining unit cohesion to extreme pressure. Company commanders typically rose through the ranks by proving their capacity to coordinate multiple specialized elements within integrated tactical frameworks, rather than through individual heroics or political maneuvers. Captain Sigismund emerged as the most prominent of Dorn's officers, serving as first captain and the Legion's primary champion. His reputation derived not from flashy combat techniques or dramatic victories, but from his absolute reliability in critical situations and his ability to inspire confidence in troops facing overwhelming odds. Sigismund embodied the Imperial Fist's ideal of disciplined competence, demonstrating tactical flexibility and strategic thinking that complemented his formidable personal combat abilities. The captain's role within the Legion extended beyond traditional military command to encompass training responsibilities and doctrinal development. Sigismund worked closely with Dorn to refine Legion combat techniques, incorporating lessons learned from each campaign into updated training protocols and tactical procedures. His position as Legion champion carried ceremonial significance, but his practical contributions involved the systematic improvement of Imperial Fist's capabilities across all operational areas. Other notable officers included Captain Fafnir Rand, whose expertise in void warfare made him invaluable during fleet actions and boarding operations. Rand's aggressive tactical style provided a counterpoint to the Legion's typically methodical approach, demonstrating how individual initiative could be channeled within disciplined operational frameworks. His assault companies specialized in rapid response to tactical operations, maintaining the offensive capabilities that balanced the Legion's defensive strengths. Captain Archamus commanded the Legion's Huskarl units, elite formations that served as Dorn's personal guard and the final reserve for critical operations. These veteran legionaries represented the pinnacle of Imperial Fist's training and discipline, capable of independent operation in the most challenging tactical environments. The Huskarls function as both bodyguards and special operations forces, undertaking missions that required absolute discretion and reliability. The Legion's apothecaries and chaplains played crucial roles in maintaining the psychological and physical health of the formation during extended campaigns. Chief Apothecary Fabius developed medical protocols that minimized casualty rates while maximizing the effectiveness of available medical resources. His innovations in battlefield medicine and injury prevention became standard throughout the Legion, contributing to their reputation for sustained operational capability. The chaplaincy, while not yet formalized as it would become in later millennia, existed in embryonic form through officers who maintained unit morale and doctrinal purity. These individuals worked to preserve Legion traditions and values during the cultural changes that accompanied rapid expansion and integration of new recruitment sources. Their efforts ensured that the Imperial Fists maintained their distinctive character while adapting to the evolving requirements of the Great Crusade. Training facilities established on the Rift and other Imperial Fists recruitment worlds became centers of tactical innovation and doctrinal development. These installations combined traditional military education with advanced technical training, producing legionaries capable of operating sophisticated equipment while maintaining the disciplined mindset that characterized the formation. The curriculum emphasized problem-solving abilities and adaptability, preparing recruits for the unpredictable challenges of interstellar warfare. The Legion's fleet assets reflected their operational requirements and tactical preferences, emphasizing vessels capable of sustained operations and heavy bombardment rather than speed or maneuverability. Imperial Fist's battle barges incorporated extensive engineering facilities and construction capabilities, allowing them to establish fortified positions on newly conquered worlds or repair battle damage without returning to major shipyards. Their strike cruisers mounted heavy weapons batteries, optimized for siege operations and orbital bombardment missions. The transformation of the Imperial Fists into a fully operational legion under Rogal Dorn's command coincided with the most intensive phase of the Great Crusade's expansion. As the Emperor's forces pushed deeper into the galaxy, encountering increasingly sophisticated enemy civilizations and complex strategic challenges, the 7th Legion found themselves at the forefront of campaigns that would define the character of the emerging Imperium. Their methodical approach to warfare and systematic fortification techniques proved invaluable in establishing permanent Imperial control over conquered territories, moving beyond simple military victory to create lasting foundations for human civilization. The compliance of the Forge World Lucius represented one of Dorn's earliest major independent commands, demonstrating his ability to conduct complex operations without direct oversight from Terra. The Mechanicum world maintained its independence through a combination of advanced defensive technologies and strategic alliances with nearby human settlements that provided raw materials in exchange for manufactured goods. Rather than launching immediate assaults against the heavily fortified industrial complexes, Dorn spent months analyzing the planet's economic and defensive systems, identifying the interdependencies that sustained Lucius's resistance to Imperial authority. His solution involved a carefully coordinated campaign that isolated Lucius from its trading partners, while simultaneously demonstrating Imperial technological capabilities that exceeded even the Forge world's advanced manufacturing systems. Imperial Fist's engineering teams established forward bases on the system's outer planets, constructing shipyards and manufacturing facilities that produced goods superior to Lucius's exports, while offering more favorable trading terms to the surrounding settlements. This economic pressure campaign
Wolf, would you
gradually
fucking kill
undermined
that
the Forge
sniper,
world's
dude?
position
You're right,
without
man.
requiring
Get some map
costly
awareness.
siege operations that might have damaged the industrial infrastructure the Imperium sought to acquire and tap. The final phase of the Lucius compliance involved direct negotiations between Dorn and the Forge World's tech priests, conducted through a series of formal meetings that emphasized mutual benefit rather than conquest and submission. The Primarch's reputation for absolute honesty in all dealings proved crucial during these discussions, as the Mechanicum representatives recognized that any agreements reached would be honored completely regardless of changing circumstances. The compliance treaty that emerged from these negotiations became a model for subsequent Mechanicum integrations, establishing patterns of cooperation that would persist throughout the Great Crusade and beyond. The establishment of the Inwit Cluster as a major Imperial stronghold demonstrated Dorn's understanding of strategic depth and regional defense networks. Rather than treating his homeworld as an isolated fortress, the Primarch developed comprehensive plans that integrated Inwit with neighboring systems to create a mutually supporting defensive complex. This involved extensive construction projects on multiple worlds, establishing supply depots, communication walls, and secondary fortification sites that could coordinate responses to threats from any direction. The engineering challenges involved in this project exceeded anything previously attempted by Imperial forces, requiring the coordination of massive construction fleets and specialized equipment across multiple star systems simultaneously. Dorn's systematic approach proved essential for managing the logistical complexity, with detailed planning documents that specified material requirements, construction sequences, and quality control procedures for every aspect of the project. The resulting defensive network became a template for similar installations throughout the expanding Imperium, demonstrating how individual worlds could be integrated into larger strategic frameworks that enhanced overall Imperial security. During the Cherok compliance, Dorn encountered one of his first major challenges in dealing with a technologically advanced human civilization that had developed along different philosophical lines from the Imperial Treaty. The Cherok hegemony possessed sophisticated military technologies and had maintained their independence through a combination of defensive fortifications and diplomatic alliances with nearby Xeno species. Their leaders viewed the Imperial expansion as a threat to human diversity and cultural development, arguing that the Emperor's vision of unified humanity would eliminate beneficial variations that had emerged during the Age of Strife.
This is the second
The
time
campaign
that has
required
happened.
Dorn to balance military necessity with political considerations,
I'm sure it
as the
happened a lot
Emperor
more,
had
but
specifically
that's the second time
instructed
I've seen
that
it.
human civilizations
Bird.
should be brought into compliance with minimal destruction of their cultural achievements and technological capabilities. The Primarch's approach involved a graduated response that began with diplomatic overtures and economic incentives, escalating to limited military demonstrations only when peaceful methods proved insufficient. This measured approach reflected his understanding that the Great Crusade's ultimate success depended on creating willing participants in the Imperial project rather than merely conquered subjects. The siege of the Cherok capital world showcased Dorn's ability to conduct precision military operations that achieved strategic objectives while minimizing collateral damage. Rather than employing the massive bombardments that characterized many compliance actions, the Imperial fists used surgical strikes against specific military targets while avoiding civilian areas and cultural sites. This approach required extensive intelligence gathering and careful coordination between different Imperial Fists units, demonstrating the Legion's capacity for complex operations that went beyond their traditional expertise in defensive warfare. The successful integration of Cherok military units into Imperial Army formations illustrated another aspect of Dorn's strategic thinking. The Primarch recognized that conquered populations became more reliable Imperial citizens when they could contribute meaningfully to the expanding war effort. Former Cherok officers found themselves commanding Imperial Army regiments equipped with their homeworld's advanced technologies, while their expertise in defensive engineering proved valuable for fortification projects throughout their sector. This integration process required careful attention to
feel
cultural
like
sensitivities
maybe
and
I should
individual
just
motivations, areas where Dorn's
go
systematic
just
approach
spec ops.
proved as effective
I think
as
it's
in
just better.
purely military contexts.
Especially when your team's not that good.
The Proxima Centauri campaign brought
Skirmishing.
Dorn into direct collaboration with several of his brother Primarchs, providing opportunities to observe different
Tried.
approaches to warfare, while demonstrating the Imperial Fist's unique capabilities within larger strategic frameworks. The system contained multiple hostile civilizations that had formed a defensive alliance against Imperial expansion, requiring coordinated operations
That's
across
fine,
several worlds
probably.
simultaneously. Horus commanded the overall campaign, with individual Primarchs responsible for specific operational areas based on their particular strengths and expertise. Dorn's assignment involved the reduction of the heavily fortified asteroid stations that controlled the system's major shipping routes. These installations had been constructed over centuries, incorporating advanced defensive technologies and interconnected command systems that allowed coordinated responses
I'll
to
never get
threats
over
from
that.
multiple directions. The asteroid fortresses represented exactly the type of challenge that suited Imperial Fist's capabilities, requiring systematic analysis of defensive systems followed by carefully planned assault operations. The campaign provided valuable lessons in inter-legion cooperation, as Imperial Fist units worked alongside elements from the Lunar Wolves, Emperor's Children, and Death Guard. Each legion brought different tactical approaches and operational capabilities, creating opportunities for mutual learning, while highlighting the distinctive characteristics that set each formation apart. Dorn observed Horus's talent for inspiring confidence and maintaining morale during difficult operations, while noting Fulgrim's emphasis on tactical perfection and Mortarian's expertise in sustained operations under adverse conditions. The asteroid siege operations themselves became textbook examples of systematic fortress reduction, with Imperial Fist's engineers identifying structural weaknesses and coordinating precision strikes that disabled defensive systems without destroying the facility's strategic value. The campaign demonstrated how different Legion specialties could be integrated within unified operational plans, with each formation contributing its particular strengths while supporting overall strategic objectives. Dorn's relationship with his brother Primarchs during this period reflected his naturally reserved personality and focus on professional competence rather than personal relationships. He maintained cordial relations with all his brothers while developing closer working relationships with those whose tactical approaches complemented his own methodical style. His interactions with Horus demonstrated mutual respect based on their shared understanding of strategic complexity and operational planning, while his discussions with Gilliman revealed common interests in systematic approaches to military organization and logistics management.
Shouldn't have peeked.
The growing tension between Dorn and Perturabo became more apparent during joint operations, as their different approaches to siege warfare created friction, despite their mutual effectiveness. Where Dorn preferred surgical precision and minimal resource expenditure, Perturabo favored overwhelming force and systematic destruction of enemy capabilities. These philosophical differences extended beyond tactical preferences to encompass fundamental disagreements about the nature of warfare and the responsibilities of military commanders toward both their own troops and enemy populations. During the Council of Nicaea, Dorn's position reflected his characteristic emphasis on practical considerations over theoretical arguments. The debate over the use of psychic powers within the legions involved complex questions about the nature of the warp, the reliability of psyker abilities, and the potential risks associated with expanded psychic training programs. Rather than taking strong ideological positions like some of his brothers, Dorn focused on operational considerations and empirical evidence about psychic abilities' effectiveness in combat situations.
Oh man, that was just
His testimony before the council emphasized the Imperial Fist's limited but positive experiences with librarian units, noting their value for intelligence gathering and communication in situations where conventional methods proved inadequate. However, he also acknowledged the legitimate concerns raised by Magnus about the unpredictable nature of psychic phenomena and the potential for catastrophic failure that could endanger entire operations. Dorn's measured approach to the debate reflected his preference for evidence-based decision-making over emotional arguments or philosophical positions. The Primarch's support for the Emperor's final decision to restrict psychic training programs demonstrated his fundamental loyalty to Imperial authority while acknowledging the complexity of the issues involved. He understood that the Council's deliberations involved considerations beyond immediate military effectiveness, including political factors and long-term strategic concerns that individual Primarchs might not fully comprehend. His willingness to accept decisions that conflicted with his personal preferences illustrated the disciplined subordination to higher authority that characterized his entire approach to military service. The Ulanor Crusade provided the largest stage yet for demonstrating Imperial Fist's capabilities within the context of a massive multi-legion operation. The Orc Empire that had emerged in the Ulanor sector represented the most significant Xenos threat encountered during the Great Crusade, requiring unprecedented coordination between different Imperial forces and tactical approaches adapted to the unique challenges of fighting Orc civilizations. Dorn's role in the campaign involved establishing and maintaining the logistical networks that sustained the massive Imperial forces required for operations across multiple star systems. The construction of forward supply bases and communication networks throughout the Ulanor sector showcased the Imperial Fist's engineering capabilities on an unprecedented scale. These installations required defensive capabilities sufficient to resist Orc raids, while providing the manufacturing and repair facilities necessary to maintain Imperial equipment during extended campaigns. The project involved coordinating construction efforts across dozens of worlds, managing resource allocation and transportation networks that spanned multiple star systems. The siege of the primary Orc fortress worlds demonstrated how Imperial Fist's techniques could be adapted to counter Xenos defensive systems that operated according to different principles from human fortification. Orc strongholds emphasized brute strength and redundancy over systematic design, creating challenges that required modified approaches to structural analysis and target identification. Dorn's engineers developed new techniques for analyzing Orc construction methods, identifying critical support elements that could be targeted to achieve maximum disruption with minimal resource expenditure. The campaign's successful conclusion and the Emperor's decision to name Horus as War Master created new dynamics within the Primarch Brotherhood that would influence subsequent operations. Dorn's reaction to his brother's elevation reflected his characteristic focus on practical considerations rather than personal ambitions. He recognized that the Great Crusade's continued expansion required centralized command authority and understood that Horus possessed the diplomatic skills and strategic vision necessary for coordinating increasingly complex multi-legion operations. The establishment of compliance garrisons throughout newly conquered territories became a major Imperial Fist's responsibility during the later phases of the Great Crusade. These installations required defensive capabilities sufficient to maintain Imperial control while providing administrative centers for civilian government and economic development. Dorn's systematic approach to garrison design created standardized fortress layouts that could be adapted to different planetary environments while maintaining consistent defensive capabilities and operational procedures. The integration of conquered populations into Imperial military and civilian structures required careful attention to cultural factors and individual motivations. Imperial Fist's officers learned to work with diverse human societies, adapting their communication styles and operational methods to accommodate different cultural backgrounds, while maintaining the disciplined efficiency that characterized Legion operations. This experience provided valuable preparation for the increasingly complex political and military challenges that would emerge as the Imperium continued its expansion toward the galaxy's outer reaches. The first reports from Istvan reached Terra as fragmented Vox transmissions and desperate astropathic messages that painted an impossible picture of betrayal and slaughter. Rogal Dorn stood in the Sanctum Imperialis, reviewing routine compliance reports when the initial communications arrived, their content so shocking that his first instinct was to question their authenticity. The idea that Horus, the War Master whom the Emperor had elevated above all other Primarchs, could turn against the very ideals he had sworn to uphold seemed to violate the fundamental order of the universe itself. The messages spoke of viral bombing, of loyal Astartes murdered by their own battle brothers, of the sons of Horus, Emperor's children, Death Guard, and World Eaters turning their weapons against those who had fought beside them for decades. Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's children had managed to warn some loyalist elements before the bombardment began, but the scale of the massacre defied comprehension. Entire companies of Space Marines had been obliterated not by Xeno's enemies or human rebels, but by their own Gene brothers acting under direct orders from the Primarchs. Dorn's methodical mind immediately began analyzing the tactical implications of what appeared to be a coordinated rebellion involving multiple legions. The strategic positioning of the traitor forces, their control of key supply routes and communication networks, and their ability to strike simultaneously across multiple fronts suggested months or even years of careful planning. This was not a spontaneous uprising or political disagreement that had escalated beyond control, but a systematic conspiracy that had been developing in secret while maintaining the appearance of absolute loyalty to the Imperial cause. The Primarch's first priority involved securing Terra itself and establishing communication with other loyal forces throughout the galaxy. If Horus had indeed turned traitor and convinced 3 other legions to join his rebellion, the immediate threat to the Imperium's heart could not be underestimated. Dorn activated emergency protocols that had been developed during the Great Crusade's early years, but never implemented, mobilizing Imperial Fist's garrison forces, while simultaneously attempting to contact other Legion commanders who might provide intelligence about the scope of the betrayal. The responses that trickled in over the following days painted an increasingly grim picture of the rebellion's extent and sophistication. Loyal elements within the traitor legions had been systematically identified and eliminated, while key Imperial installations throughout the galaxy found themselves under attack by forces that possessed intimate knowledge of their defensive systems and operational procedures. The rebels had clearly spent considerable time preparing for this moment, positioning their assets and eliminating potential opposition before revealing their true intentions. Word of the Dropsite massacre reached Terra several weeks later, carried by the few survivors who had managed to escape the killing fields of Istvan V. The accounts of Ferrus Manes' death and the near total destruction of 3 loyal legions confirmed Dorn's worst fears about the rebellion's scope and the traitor's willingness to employ any means necessary to achieve their objectives. The Iron Hands, Salamanders, and Raven Guard had walked into a carefully prepared trap, lured by false intelligence and destroyed by overwhelming force before they could adapt to the changed tactical situation. The strategic implications of the Dropsite massacre extended far beyond the immediate loss of 3 legions and their irreplaceable gene seed stocks.
Please, bro.
The traitors had demonstrated their ability to coordinate complex operations across multiple star systems, while maintaining operational security that prevented loyal forces from detecting their preparations. More significantly, they had shown their willingness to murder fellow Astartes without hesitation, indicating that this conflict would follow none of the traditional rules of engagement that had governed previous Imperial military operations. Dorn's analysis of the tactical situation revealed the full magnitude of the challenge facing the remaining loyal forces. The traitors controlled significant fleet assets and had secured key strategic positions throughout the galaxy, while their ability to strike without warning had disrupted Imperial communication networks and supply lines. The traditional advantages that Imperial forces had enjoyed during the Great Crusade, superior coordination, reliable logistics, and unified command structure, had been compromised by the rebellion's systematic targeting of critical infrastructure and key personnel. The Emperor's summons arrived as Dorn was coordinating emergency defensive measures for the Sol system, transmitted through secure channels that bypassed the compromised astropathic networks. The message contained no detailed explanations or strategic analysis, only a direct command that brooked no delay or discussion. The Praetorian of Terra was to return to the throne world immediately, abandoning all other responsibilities to focus on the defense of humanity's seat of power against the coming storm. The journey back to Terra provided Dorn with additional intelligence about the rebellion's progress and the loyalist response to the crisis.
They always get me.
Reports from across the galaxy described Imperial forces struggling to adapt to a conflict that violated every assumption about Space Marine warfare and Legion loyalty. Traditional tactical doctrines proved inadequate against enemies who possessed identical training, equipment, and strategic knowledge, while operating under the advantage of surprise and coordinated planning. The Imperial Fist's fleet that accompanied Dorn's return to Terra brought additional loyal forces that had been scattered across multiple sectors during the Great Crusade's final campaigns. These units provided first-hand accounts of traitor activities in their operational areas, describing systematic attacks on Imperial installations and the elimination of loyalist elements within previously trusted formations. The pattern that emerged suggested a rebellion that had been planned for years, with traitor agents positioned throughout Imperial command structures and key installations prepared for simultaneous activation in the Signal camp. Upon reaching Terra, Dorn found the Imperial Palace already bustling with defensive preparations as news of the rebellion spread throughout the Sol system.
Which is your stupid class?
The Emperor had withdrawn from public view, focusing his attention on mysterious projects within the deepest levels of the palace, while leaving the practical aspects of defensive planning to his most trusted son. The responsibility for transforming Terra into an impregnable fortress fell entirely on Dorn's shoulders, a task that would require every aspect of his expertise in defensive architecture and strategic planning. The scale of the fortification project that the Emperor envisioned exceeded anything previously attempted in human history. Terra was to become not merely a defended world, but the ultimate fortress, capable of withstanding siege by forces that might include multiple Space Marine legions, equipped with the most advanced weapons and siege equipment in the Imperial arsenal. The defensive network would need to protect not only the Imperial Palace itself, but also the critical infrastructure that sustained the planet's massive population and the administrative functions that coordinated the Imperium's continued operation. Dorn's initial surveys of Terra's existing defenses revealed both strengths and critical vulnerabilities that would need to be addressed before any serious siege operations could begin. The Imperial Palace represented a formidable fortress in its own right, but its defensive systems had been designed primarily to protect against internal threats and conventional military forces, rather than the specialized siege capabilities that Space Marine legions could bring to bear. The surrounding city structures, while impressive from an architectural standpoint, lacked the integrated defensive features that would be necessary to channel attacking forces into predetermined engagement zones. The first phase of the fortification project involved establishing outer defensive perimeters that could detect and engage enemy forces while they were still approaching Terra from space. This required the construction of orbital defense platforms, sensor networks, and communication systems that could coordinate responses across the entire Sol system. The engineering challenges involved in this work exceeded those of any previous Imperial construction project, requiring the mobilization of resources from across the galaxy and the coordination of specialized construction teams that possess the technical expertise necessary for such advanced defensive systems. Simultaneously, Dorn began redesigning Terra's surface defenses to create multiple layers of resistance that could absorb and channel enemy assaults, while preserving the defensive capabilities necessary for sustained resistance. The project involved not only new construction, but also the modification of existing structures to serve defensive purposes, transforming civilian buildings into strongholds and creating underground networks that could support support continued resistance, even if surface positions were overrun. The early engagement between Imperial Fist's forces and traitor elements provided crucial intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactical approaches while testing the defensive systems in development. These encounters typically involved small-scale actions, as traitor reconnaissance forces attempted to gather intelligence about Terra's defenses, while Loyalist patrols worked to identify and eliminate enemy agents who might be operating within the Sol system itself. The first significant clash occurred when a Death Guard strike force attempted to establish a forward observation post on one of Terra's outer moons, seeking to monitor Imperial fleet movements and defensive preparations. Imperial Fist's rapid response units detected the enemy landing and launched an immediate counterattack that demonstrated both the effectiveness of the new defensive networks and the tactical adaptations that would be necessary in fighting former battle brothers who possessed identical training and equipment. The engagement revealed how profoundly the nature of Space Marine warfare had been altered by the rebellion. Traditional tactics that relied on coordination between different Legion elements became impossible when the enemy possessed detailed knowledge of Imperial operational procedures and communication protocols. Imperial Fist's commanders found themselves forced to develop entirely new tactical approaches that assumed enemy familiarity with their standard methods while maintaining the disciplined coordination that had always been their greatest strength. The psychological impact of fighting former allies proved as challenging as the tactical adaptations required for a changed strategic situation. Imperial Fist's veterans who had fought alongside Death Guard units during the Great Crusade now found themselves exchanging fire with warriors they had once called brothers, a situation that tested their mental resilience and required careful attention from Legion chaplains and apothecaries. The betrayal struck at fundamental assumptions about loyalty and duty that had formed the foundation of Space Marine identity since the earliest days of the Legions. Reports from other loyal forces throughout the galaxy provided additional evidence of the traitors' systematic approach to the rebellion and their willingness to employ any tactics necessary to achieve their objectives.
You know, like,
Word-bearers' forces had revealed their secret allegiance to Chaos powers, bringing demonic allies into battle alongside corrupted space marines who bore symbols and markings that violated every principle of Imperial truth. The Emperor's children had embraced excesses that transformed them into barely recognizable parodies of their former selves, while the Sons of Horus maintained their tactical excellence while serving goals that directly contradicted everything they had once fought to achieve. The intelligence gathered from these early encounters informed Dorn's ongoing defensive preparations, as he worked to anticipate the specific threats that each traitor legion might present during a siege of Terra. The Death Guard's expertise in attrition warfare and chemical weapons required specific countermeasures and protective equipment, while the Emperor's children's pursuit of perfection in all aspects of warfare demanded defensive systems capable of responding to highly sophisticated assault techniques. The Sons of Horus retained their reputation for tactical flexibility and combined arms operations, requiring defensive plans that could adapt to rapidly changing tactical situations. As the fortification of Terra continued, Dorn found himself coordinating with other loyal Primars who had managed to maintain contact with the Throne World despite the disrupted communication networks. Jagatai Khan provided intelligence about traitor movements in the outer sectors, while Leman Russ reported on his efforts to track down and eliminate traitor forces that threatened critical Imperial installations. These communications revealed the extent to which the rebellion had fragmented Imperial forces, isolating loyal elements and forcing them to operate independently while facing coordinated opposition from multiple traitor factions. The arrival of refugees from worlds that had fallen to traitor forces provided additional intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactical methods while presenting significant logistical challenges for Terra's defensive preparations. These survivors brought first-hand accounts of how quickly established Imperial governments had collapsed when faced with coordinated attacks by Space Marine forces operating without the restraints that had previously limited their actions. The reports described systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure, the elimination of local leadership, and the establishment of military governments that served traitor strategic objectives rather than imperial law. The transformation of Terra into the ultimate fortress began with Dorn's comprehensive assessment of the planet's existing defensive infrastructure, a process that revealed both the magnitude of the task ahead and the critical vulnerabilities that required immediate attention. The Imperial Palace, while architecturally magnificent and symbolically powerful, had been designed during a period when the greatest threats came from human techno-barbarian armies, equipped with conventional weapons, rather than space marine legions possessing orbital bombardment capabilities and siege equipment that could breach any conventional fortification. Dorn's initial surveys identified 3 primary defensive zones that would need complete restructuring to create an integrated defense network capable of withstanding the coming siege. The orbital approaches to Terra required a comprehensive sensor and weapons grid that could detect incoming threats while they were still days away from the planet, providing early warning and the opportunity to engage enemy forces before they could establish orbital superiority. The planet's upper atmosphere needed defensive installations that could coordinate with orbital platforms while providing backup systems in case primary defenses were compromised or destroyed. The surface defenses presented the most complex challenges, as they needed to protect not only the Imperial Palace itself, but also the vast urban sprawl that housed Terra's billions of inhabitants, and the critical infrastructure that sustained both the planetary population and the administrative functions of the Imperium. The existing city structures, while impressive examples of human architectural achievement, lacked the defensive features necessary to channel attacking forces into predetermined zones, while providing protected routes for defender movement and supply distribution. The scale of construction required to implement Dorn's defensive vision exceeded any previous Imperial engineering project, demanding the mobilization of resources from across the galaxy and the coordination of specialized construction teams whose expertise spanned everything from orbital mechanics to underground excavation. Mechanicum forged ships arrived in the Sol system, carrying prefabricated components for defense platforms, while construction vessels from a dozen different sectors brought the raw materials necessary for the massive earthworks and fortification systems that would transform Terra's surface into a series of interconnected strongholds. The Aegis defense lines became the cornerstone of Dorn's surface fortification strategy, representing a revolutionary approach to planetary defense that integrated multiple defensive systems within a unified tactical framework. Rather than relying on isolated strongholds that could be bypassed or overwhelmed with concentrated assault, the Aegis lines created overlapping fields of fire and mutually supporting positions that forced attacking forces to engage the entire defensive network simultaneously, while providing defenders with maximum flexibility for tactical response and strategic repositioning. Construction of the Aegis lines required extensive modification of Terra's existing topography, with massive earth-moving operations that carved new valleys and raised artificial hills to create optimal firing positions and defensive barriers. The work involved not only Imperial Fist's engineering specialists, but also conscripted civilian construction teams whose expertise in large-scale building projects proved essential for managing the logistical complexity of simultaneous construction across multiple continental areas. The defensive positions themselves incorporated lessons learned from every major siege operation of the Great Crusade, combining traditional fortification principles with innovative technologies that maximize defensive effectiveness while minimizing resource requirements. Each stronghold included multiple weapon systems capable of engaging different types of targets, from massed infantry formations to armored vehicles and aircraft, while underground connections allowed rapid redeployment of forces and supplies without exposing defenders to enemy observation or interdiction. The integration of existing civilian infrastructure into the defensive network required careful planning to maintain the economic and administrative functions that sustained Terra's population, while creating defensive capabilities that could channel attacking forces into predetermined engagement zones. Major transportation arteries were modified to include defensive checkpoints and obstacles that could be activated during combat operations, while civilian buildings received structural reinforcements and weapon positions that transformed them into impromptu strongholds when circumstances required. Underground tunnel networks became a critical component of the defensive system, providing protected routes for troop movement and supply distribution that remained functional even when surface positions came under heavy bombardment. The excavation work required to create these networks involved drilling through layers of ancient construction and archaeological remains that documented Terra's long history, revealing artifacts and structures from periods spanning back to the dark age of technology. The coordination required for these massive construction projects tested every aspect of Imperial logistical capabilities, as materials and personnel needed to be transported across interstellar distances while maintaining operational security that prevented traitor forces from gathering detailed intelligence about the defensive preparations. Supply convoys arriving in the Sol system required escort by Imperial Navy vessels, while construction sites on Terra itself needed security detachments that could identify and eliminate enemy reconnaissance teams that might attempt to gather technical intelligence. Orbital defense platforms represented another crucial element of Dorn's comprehensive defensive strategy, providing the long-range engagement capabilities necessary to engage enemy fleets while they were still approaching Terra from deep space. The construction of these installations required specialized engineering techniques that could create stable platforms capable of mounting massive weapon systems while maintaining the structural integrity necessary to withstand the recoil forces generated by sustained bombardment operations. Each orbital platform incorporated multiple weapon systems optimized for different tactical scenarios, from long-range lance batteries that could engage capital ships at maximum range to point defense systems designed to intercept incoming torpedoes and assault craft. The platforms also included sensor arrays that could coordinate with their counterparts throughout the Sol system, creating an integrated detection network that could track multiple threats simultaneously while providing targeting data for defensive weapon systems. The positioning of orbital platforms required careful analysis of orbital mechanics and enemy approach vectors, ensuring that defensive coverage remained effective regardless of Terra's position relative to other system bodies or the direction in which attacking forces might approach. The platforms needed sufficient mobility to adjust their positions based on changing tactical requirements while maintaining the structural stability necessary for accurate long-range gunnery against fast-moving targets. Communication networks linking the orbital platforms with surface defenses and fleet elements created an integrated command structure that could coordinate responses across multiple defensive zones while maintaining redundant systems that ensured continued operation, even if primary communication nodes were destroyed or compromised. The networks incorporated both conventional Vox systems and more advanced technologies that could function despite enemy jamming or interference, ensuring that defensive coordination remained effective throughout extended siege operations. The integration of loyalist forces from other regions into Terra's defensive network required careful coordination to maximize their unique capabilities while maintaining the systematic approach that characterized Dorn's overall strategic plan. White Scar's elements provided rapid response capabilities that could exploit tactical opportunities or reinforce threatened positions, while their expertise in mobile warfare complemented the Imperial Fist's emphasis on static defensive positions. Blood Angels units brought close combat expertise that proved valuable for defending critical choke points, where enemy forces might attempt breakthrough assaults, while their experience in urban warfare provided insights into the tactical challenges of fighting within Terra's dense metropolitan areas. The integration process required extensive coordination between different Legion command structures and tactical doctrines, creating unified operational procedures that maximize each formation's strengths while minimizing potential conflicts or coordination failures. Imperial Army regiments arriving from across the galaxy brought additional manpower and specialized capabilities that filled gaps in the Space Marine defensive network, providing the numerical strength necessary to garrison extensive fortification systems while freeing Astartes units for mobile operations and critical defensive positions. The coordination between Space Marine and Imperial Army elements required careful attention to command structures and communication procedures, ensuring that orders could be transmitted effectively across different organizational hierarchies and tactical doctrines. Mechanicum forces contributed specialized engineering capabilities and advanced weapon systems that enhanced the defensive network's technological sophistication, while providing maintenance and repair services for the complex systems that sustained orbital platforms and automated defensive installations. The Tech Priest's expertise in advanced technologies proved essential for implementing some of Dorn's more ambitious defensive concepts, particularly those involving integrated sensor networks and automated response systems. The deployment of Imperial Fists companies throughout the Sol system created a distributed defensive network that could respond to threats at multiple locations while maintaining centralized coordination through the command structure established on Terra. Companies assigned to Luna, Mars, and the Outer System defense stations received specialized training and equipment appropriate to their specific operational environments, while maintaining the tactical flexibility necessary to redeploy to Terra itself if circumstances required concentration of forces for the final defense. Luna's defensive installations required particular attention due to the Moon's strategic importance as Terra's primary orbital companion and its historical significance as humanity's first step into space. The existing mining and industrial facilities provided foundations for defensive positions, but required extensive modification to create integrated strongpoints capable of coordinating with Terra's orbital defenses, while maintaining independent operational capability if communications were disrupted. Mars presented unique challenges due to its status as the primary Mechanicum world and the political sensitivities involved in coordinating defensive preparations with the Tech Priests who controlled the planet's industrial resources. The integration of Martian defensive systems with the broader Sol system network required diplomatic negotiations that balanced Imperial strategic requirements with Mechanicum autonomy, creating command structures that respected existing political arrangements while ensuring effective military coordination. The Outer System defense stations, established at key gravitational points and asteroid mining facilities, created an early warning network that could detect approaching enemy forces while providing forward defensive positions that might delay or disrupt enemy operations before they reach the inner system. These installations required self-sufficient operational capabilities and the ability to coordinate with fleet elements that might be operating in the outer system, creating multiple layers of defensive coverage that forced enemy forces to fight their way through successive defensive lines. The asteroid belt mining stations received particular attention due to their potential value as sources of raw materials for defensive construction, while serving as observation posts that could monitor enemy movements throughout the system. The modification of existing mining equipment for defensive purposes created impromptu weapon systems and fortifications that utilized the
So much
natural cover provided by asteroid terrain,
Your
while
team just
maintaining
simply
the
says,
industrial
"You know,
capabilities necessary
we're winning,
to support
let's just let
continued
them
construction
take all
efforts.
the points and lose."
Fleet coordination became increasingly critical as Imperial Navy vessels arriving in the Sol system required integration into the overall defensive plan while maintaining their operational flexibility for offensive operations against enemy forces that might threaten other Imperial territories. The balance between concentrating naval assets for Terra's defense and maintaining fleet elements for broader strategic operations required careful analysis of intelligence about enemy fleet movements and strategic intentions. The establishment of fleet anchorages and supply depots throughout the Sol system created the logistical infrastructure necessary to sustain naval operations during extended siege conditions, while providing protected bases that could support continued fleet operations, even if enemy forces achieved temporary orbital superiority around Terra itself.
This guy,
These installations required their own defensive systems and garrison forces, while contributing to the overall defensive network through their sensor capabilities and communication systems. The first signs of Horus's approaching armada appeared as distorted sensor readings at the edge of the Sol system, where Imperial monitoring stations detected massive gravitic disturbances that suggested fleet movements on an unprecedented scale. The readings defied initial analysis, showing energy signatures that corresponded to hundreds of capital ships moving in coordinated formations, while maintaining strict communication silence that prevented detailed identification of individual vessels or their specific capabilities. The scale of the approaching force exceeded even Dorn's most pessimistic projections for the size of fleet that the traitor legions might assemble for their assault on Terra. Within hours of the initial detection, additional sensor stations throughout the outer system began reporting similar contacts, revealing that the enemy approach involved multiple fleet elements converging on Terra from different vectors simultaneously. The tactical sophistication of this coordinated arrival demonstrated the extensive planning that had preceded the assault, with enemy forces positioned to arrive at optimal engagement ranges, while minimizing their exposure to the Sol system's defensive installations during their final approach to Terra itself. Dorn's command center within the Imperial Palace received continuous updates from monitoring stations as the enemy fleet composition became clearer through detailed sensor
that's
analysis.
when the animation is going.
The approaching armada included not only the expected
when I swam
elements
10
from the
million
Sons of
miles
Horus,
on those
Death
highways.
Guard, Emperor's Children, and World Eaters, but also significant contingents from legions whose loyalty had previously remained uncertain. The Iron Warrior's distinctive ship signatures confirmed Perturabo's allegiance to the rebellion, while Word-Bearer's vessels provided evidence of Lorger's involvement in coordinating the assault despite his legion's previous focus on ideological rather than military objectives. The size of the traitor fleet indicated that virtually every available ship from the rebellious legions had been committed to this single operation, representing a strategic gamble that would either secure complete victory or result in catastrophic defeat for the rebellion. Intelligence estimates suggested that the attacking force included over 1,000 capital ships, along with countless escort vessels, transport craft, and specialized siege equipment that had been gathered from across the galaxy for this decisive confrontation. The enemy's approach strategy revealed sophisticated understanding of the Sol system's defensive capabilities and the tactical challenges involved in conducting siege operations against a heavily fortified planetary target. Rather than attempting a direct assault that would expose their forces to maximum defensive fire, the traitor fleets adopted dispersed approach vectors that forced Imperial defenders to divide their attention across multiple threat axes, while preventing effective concentration of defensive firepower against any single enemy formation. As the enemy fleets closed on Terra, Dorn activated the final phases of the planetary defense network that had been under construction since the first reports of Horus's betrayal reached the throne room. orbital defense platforms throughout the system powered up their primary weapon systems, while surface installations completed their targeting solutions on the approaching enemy formations. The coordination required to manage this vast defensive network tested every aspect of the command and control system that Imperial engineers had developed during months of intensive preparation. The opening exchanges of the siege began while the trader fleets were still days away from Terra, as long-range orbital defense platforms engaged the leading elements of the enemy formation with massive land strikes that could reach across interplanetary distances. These initial bombardments served primarily as ranging shots that provided targeting data for subsequent engagements, while demonstrating to the approaching enemy that Terra's defenses were fully operational and prepared for sustained combat operations. Enemy responses to the initial defensive bombardments revealed the extent to which the traitor legions had modified their standard equipment and tactical doctrines since the beginning of the rebellion. Ships that had once borne Imperial heraldry now displayed symbols and markings that violated every principle of the Imperial truth, while their weapons' signatures suggested modifications that incorporated technologies of unknown origin and questionable reliability. The first major engagement occurred when advance elements of the Death Guard fleet attempted to establish orbital supremacy over Terra's northern hemisphere, launching a coordinated assault against the defense platforms that protected the primary approach routes to the Imperial Palace. The battle demonstrated both the effectiveness of Dorn's defensive preparations and the tactical adaptations that would be necessary for fighting former allies who possessed detailed knowledge of Imperial defensive systems and operational procedures. Imperial Fist's fleet elements engaged the Death Guard advance force in a series of running battles that tested the modifications Dorn had made to standard Imperial naval tactics.
Was indeed armored car.
The traditional emphasis on coordinated squadron actions proved inadequate against enemies who anticipated conventional Imperial responses, forcing Imperial commanders to develop improvised tactical approaches that maintained their formation's effectiveness while avoiding predictable patterns that enemy forces could exploit. The Death Guard's approach to the orbital engagement reflected their legion's traditional emphasis on attrition warfare and sustained pressure rather than decisive breakthrough operations. Their fleet formations accepted heavy casualties while maintaining steady pressure on Imperial defensive positions, gradually wearing down defensive capabilities through sustained bombardment rather than attempting the rapid decisive actions that characterized other Traitor Legion tactics. Mortarian's personal flagship, the Endurance, led the Death Guard assault with a methodical approach that systematically engaged each defensive platform while coordinating supporting fire from escort vessels. The ship's modifications since the beginning of the rebellion were immediately apparent, with weapon systems that fired projectiles trailing sickly green energy and hull plating that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light from nearby explosions. The engagement around the lunar orbital stations provided the first clear demonstration of how the siege would develop, as traitor forces attempted to establish forward bases that could support sustained operations against Terra's surface defenses. The Death Guard landing operations on Luna's surface encountered prepared defensive positions that Imperial Fist's garrison forces had spent months fortifying, creating killing zones that channeled enemy assault forces into predetermined engagement areas. The battles for Luna's surface installations revealed the psychological challenges that would characterize the entire siege, as Imperial defenders found themselves fighting former battle brothers whose appearance and behavior had been altered by their exposure to chaos influences. Death Guard assault troops displayed resilience that exceeded even their previous legendary endurance, shrugging off wounds that would have incapacitated normal Space Marines while pressing their attacks with mechanical persistence that seemed divorced from tactical considerations. Imperial Fist's companies defending the lunar installations adapted their tactics to account for enemy capabilities that no longer followed predictable patterns, developing new techniques for engaging opponents whose response to damage and tactical pressure differed significantly from standard Astartes behavioral patterns. The modifications required careful coordination between squad leaders and company commanders, ensuring that tactical innovations could be implemented quickly while maintaining the disciplined coordination that remained the Imperial Fist's greatest strength. The successful defense of Luna's primary installations provided valuable intelligence about enemy capabilities, while demonstrating that traitor forces were not invincible despite their enhanced resilience and modified equipment. Imperial Fist's after-action reports identified specific vulnerabilities in Death Guard, assault techniques, and equipment modifications that could be exploited in subsequent engagements, information that proved crucial for developing countermeasures against similar attacks on Terra's surface defenses. Meanwhile, Emperor's Children fleet elements approached Terra from the galactic south, their distinctive purple and gold vessels maintaining perfect formation discipline, even under heavy fire from orbital defense platforms. The tactical precision of their approach reflected Fulgrim's continued emphasis on perfection in all aspects of warfare, with each ship maintaining exact position relative to its squadron mates, while executing complex maneuvers that maximize their offensive capabilities while minimizing exposure to defensive fire. The Emperor's Children assault on the Mercury Wall defense stations demonstrated their Legion's evolution toward increasingly extreme tactical approaches that prioritized aesthetic perfection over practical military effectiveness. Their attack formations maintained flawless geometric precision even when sustaining heavy casualties, with individual ships continuing their assigned roles within the formation, despite catastrophic damage that would have forced conventional units to withdraw or modify their approach. Dorn observed these engagements from the Palace Command Center, analyzing enemy tactical patterns while coordinating defensive responses across multiple operational areas simultaneously. The intelligence gathered from the initial clashes confirmed his assessment that the traitor legions had undergone fundamental changes that affected not only their equipment and appearance, but also their basic approach to warfare and tactical decision-making. The coordination between different traitor legion elements revealed sophisticated planning that integrated their diverse tactical approaches within unified operational frameworks.
I thought that was a good guy.
Death Guard attrition tactics created opportunities for Emperor's Children precision strikes, while both formations provided cover for Iron Warrior's siege specialists, who began establishing forward positions for the heavy equipment that would be necessary for breaching Terra's surface defenses.
High up as possible.
As enemy forces consolidated their positions throughout the Sol system, Dorn implemented the next phase of his defensive strategy by activating the deep space monitoring networks that could track enemy movements while they were still beyond the range of conventional sensors. These installations, hidden among asteroid fields and derelict orbital facilities, provided early warning of enemy reinforcements or tactical redeployments, while serving as forward observation posts for long-range artillery strikes. The intelligence gathered from these monitoring stations revealed that the traitor assault represented only the first wave of a much larger operation, with additional enemy forces holding position at the system's edge, while the initial assault forces tested Imperial defensive capabilities and identified weaknesses that could be exploited in subsequent phases of the siege. The scale of the enemy commitment exceeded even Dorn's most comprehensive projections, suggesting that the traitors had committed virtually every available resource to this single decisive operation. Reports from the outer system defense stations described enemy reconnaissance activities that suggested systematic intelligence gathering about Imperial defensive positions and capabilities. Small enemy formations probed defensive installations, while larger forces maintained their positions, gathering tactical data that would inform subsequent assault operations, while avoiding premature commitment of major assets to engagements that might reveal their own capabilities and limitations. The Lion's Gate spaceport became the focus of the first major surface engagement, as Iron Warrior siege specialists established forward positions that could support landing operations by the main enemy assault forces. The spaceport's strategic importance as Terra's primary interface with orbital
Wow.
traffic made it a critical objective for both sides, with Imperial defenders recognizing that its loss would severely compromise their ability to receive reinforcements or supplies from off-world sources. Perdurabo's approach to the spaceport assault reflected his systematic methodology and emphasis on overwhelming firepower applied through carefully coordinated siege operations. Iron Warrior's engineering units began construction of siege works that could support
Oh,
the heavy
they're on the
artillery
roof.
necessary to breach the
There goes the
spaceport's
roof.
defensive installations, while assault companies established perimeter positions that protected the construction efforts from Imperial counterattacks. The initial phases of the Lion's Gate engagement demonstrated the tactical challenges that both sides would face throughout the siege, as familiar opponents who had fought together for decades now found themselves applying their expertise against former allies who understood their capabilities and tactical preferences. Imperial Fist's defenders adapted their standard defensive procedures to account for enemy familiarity with their operational methods, while Iron Warrior's assault forces modified their approach to counter anticipated Imperial responses.
That dude
Dorn's
did not
coordination
care, bro.
of the
He just
spaceport
left.
defense involved careful integration of Imperial Fist's companies with Blood Angels and White Scar's elements that had arrived on Terra during the final phases of defensive preparation. The different legions' tactical approaches required careful coordination to maximize their combined effectiveness
points for this?
while avoiding the confusion that
Because
might
if I
result
don't,
from
I'm
conflicting
gonna have to fight
operational
them.
procedures
Touch him
or
and
command
place him.
structures. The Blood Angels brought close combat expertise that proved essential for defending the spaceport's interior spaces, where Iron Warrior's assault teams attempted to establish footholds and support subsequent
I couldn't stand
operations.
up.
Their experience in urban warfare complemented the Imperial Fist's defensive specialization, creating integrated tactical responses that maximized the
You want to
advantages of
taste
fighting
it?
on prepared ground,
don't want.
while maintaining the flexibility necessary to respond to changing
You
tactical
missed everything,
situations.
'cause I'm-
White Scar's rapid response capabilities provided the mobility necessary to exploit tactical opportunities or reinforce threatened positions throughout the sprawling spaceport complex. Their hit-and-run tactics disrupted Iron Warrior supply lines, while their speed allowed them to redeploy quickly between different engagement areas, maintaining pressure on enemy forces while avoiding prolonged engagements that might result in unsustainable casualties. The siege of the Lion's Gate spaceport established patterns that would characterize the entire battle for Terra, with both sides demonstrating tactical innovations that reflected their adaptation to the unique challenges of fighting former allies, while operating under the extreme pressures of a siege that would determine the fate of the entire Imperium. The coordination between Dorn, Sanguinius, and Jaguar during these critical phases created a unified command structure that maximized each Primarch's strength
those
while
towers are
maintaining the
just
strategic coherence
most
necessary for effective defense against
cancerous-inducing
multiple
things.
simultaneous
This-
threats.
Just take
The
them
systematic
out.
collapse of Terra's outer defensive perimeters began during the siege's 7th week,
Yeah,
when
kill
sustained bombardment from Iron Warrior's artillery finally breached the primary walls of the Lion's Gate spaceport. The massive fortress complex that had anchored the northern defensive sector for months crumbled under the weight of coordinated
Oh, I
assault
got it.
by siege specialists who understood every weakness in Imperial defensive architecture.
Easy points right there,
Perdurabo's
brothers.
methodical approach had identified the critical structural points that supported the spaceport's defensive network,
This
and his
guy.
heavy guns had pounded those
You guys
positions
almost up.
with relentless precision until the interconnected strongholds could no longer maintain their integrated fields of fire. The loss of the Lion's Gate created a cascade failure
I
throughout the
landed
northern
in a
approaches
vodka
to the
today.
Imperial Palace, as enemy forces poured through the breach faster than Imperial defenders could establish new defensive lines. Iron Warrior's assault companies advanced through the rubble with mechanical efficiency, their modified power armor allowing them to operate in the toxic atmosphere that their bombardment had created, while Imperial Fist's companies fell back towards secondary positions that lacked the prepared killing zones and interlocking fire patterns that had made the outer defenses so effective. Dorn coordinated the fighting withdrawal from his command bunker deep within the palace, watching tactical displays that showed red enemy markers advancing steadily through defensive sectors that had taken months to construct and fortify. Each fallen position represented not only lost ground, but also the destruction of carefully integrated defensive systems that could not be quickly replaced or replicated in the inner defensive zones. The tactical situation deteriorated with each passing hour as traitor forces consolidated their gains, while Imperial defenders struggled to establish coherent defensive lines, using positions that had been designed as fallback options rather than primary strongholds. The Eternity Wall spaceport held longer than Heaven's Gate, its defenders benefiting from the lessons learned during the northern sector's collapse and the additional time available for final defensive preparations. Blood Angel's companies under Sanguinius's direct command transformed the spaceport's interior into a maze of interconnected strongholds that channeled attacking forces into predetermined killing zones, while providing defenders with protected routes for tactical redeployment and supply distribution. The Angel's tactical genius proved essential for maximizing the defensive potential of positions that had not been designed for sustained siege warfare. World Eater's assault companies that attacked the Eternity Wall demonstrated the complete transformation that Angron's Legion had undergone since the beginning of the rebellion. Their assault techniques abandoned the disciplined coordination that had once characterized Space Marine warfare, replaced by frenzied charges that relied on overwhelming aggression and modified weaponry that seemed designed more for causing maximum carnage than achieving tactical objectives. The Berserkers showed no concern for casualties or tactical coordination, pressing their attacks with mechanical fury that continued even when their formations suffered devastating losses. The psychological impact of fighting these transformed enemies proved as challenging as their enhanced combat capabilities. Blood Angel's defenders found themselves engaging opponents who displayed no response to pain or tactical pressure, continuing their attacks even when suffering wounds that would have incapacitated normal Space Marines. The World Eaters modified weaponry-incorporated technologies that seemed designed to cause maximum suffering rather than clean kills, creating additional psychological pressure on Imperial defenders who witnessed the effects of these weapons on their battle brothers. Sanguinius adapted his tactical approach to account for enemy behavior that no longer followed predictable patterns, developing new techniques for channeling Berserker charges into areas where their aggression could be contained and neutralized through coordinated defensive fire. The Angel's understanding of close combat dynamics proved essential for creating defensive positions that could absorb the impact of World Eater's assaults while maintaining the structural integrity necessary for continued resistance. The coordination between Blood Angels and Imperial Fists companies during the Eternity Wall's defense demonstrated how different Legion tactical doctrines could be integrated within unified defensive frameworks. Imperial Fist's heavy weapons specialists provided the sustained firepower necessary to break up World Eater's formations before they reached defensive positions, while Blood Angel's assault companies conducted counterattacks that exploited gaps in enemy formations created by their own undisciplined advance. As the outer defenses crumbled under sustained enemy pressure, Dorn implemented the final phase of his defensive strategy by ordering a general withdrawal to the inner palace sanctuary. This decision represented the abandonment of months of construction work and defensive preparation, but the tactical situation no longer supported continued resistance in positions that had been compromised by the loss of their supporting strongholds and integrated fire control systems. The withdrawal required precise coordination to prevent the orderly retreat from degenerating into a rout that would allow enemy forces to pursue retreating Imperial units and destroy them piecemeal. Imperial Fists companies conducted fighting withdrawals that maintained contact with enemy forces while gradually falling back toward prepared positions, using predetermined routes that had been surveyed and prepared during the defensive construction phase. Demolition teams destroyed critical infrastructure and supply depots to deny their use to advancing enemy forces while creating obstacles that would slow their pursuit of retreating Imperial units. The inner palace sanctum represented Dorn's final defensive masterpiece, a concentrated network of interconnected strongholds that maximized the defensive potential of the palace's ancient architecture, while incorporating modern weapon systems and communication networks. The Sanctum's defensive positions had been carved from the palace's bedrock foundations, creating underground networks that could support continued resistance even if surface positions were overrun or destroyed by enemy bombardment. The palace's throne room became the ultimate redoubt, its massive doors and ancient walls reinforced with the most advanced defensive technologies available to Imperial engineers. The chamber's symbolic significance as the heart of Imperial power made it the natural focus for the siege's final phase, while its physical characteristics provided defensive advantages that could be exploited by troops fighting from prepared positions against enemies forced to attack through narrow approaches. Within the Sanctum, Dorn established his final command post in chambers that had been excavated from the living rock beneath the palace's oldest foundations. The command center's communication systems maintained contact with surviving defensive positions throughout Terra, while coordinating with Imperial fleet elements that continued to operate despite fleeing orbital superiority. The facility's defensive systems could operate independently, even if surface installations were completely destroyed, ensuring that command and control capabilities would survive until the siege's final moments. The Emperor's withdrawal to the deepest levels of the palace during the siege's final phases removed him from direct involvement in tactical decision-making, while he focused on mysterious projects that required his complete attention. The responsibility for coordinating Terra's defense fell entirely on the Primarchs who remained active in military operations, with Dorn serving as the senior commander responsible for overall strategic coordination, while Sanguinius and Jagatai Khan managed specific operational areas. Reports from surviving observation posts described the systematic destruction of Terra's surface infrastructure as enemy forces consolidated their control over the areas surrounding the palace. The traitor legions showed no concern for preserving the civilian population or maintaining the industrial facilities that had sustained Terra's massive population, instead focusing on eliminating any potential sources of resistance or intelligence that might support continued Imperial operations. The orbital situation deteriorated further as enemy fleet elements established complete control over Terra's immediate orbital space, positioning bombardment platforms that could provide direct fire support for ground operations, while preventing any possibility of Imperial reinforcement or evacuation. The loss of orbital superiority eliminated the possibility of external support for the palace's defenders, while allowing enemy forces to coordinate their ground operations with precision orbital strikes against specific defensive positions.
Got this. That looks cool.
Intelligence reports from the few remaining Imperial agents operating outside the palace described the establishment of enemy command centers in captured Imperial facilities, with traitor Primarchs coordinating their operations from positions that provided optimal oversight of the siege operations. The systematic nature of enemy operations suggested careful planning that integrated the different traitor legions' capabilities within unified tactical frameworks designed to maximize pressure on the remaining Imperial positions. During the siege's final week, enemy bombardment patterns shifted from area suppression to precision targeting of specific palace defensive systems, suggesting that traitor forces had gathered detailed intelligence about the Sanctum's layout and defensive capabilities. The accuracy of these strikes indicated either extensive reconnaissance operations or intelligence provided by sources with intimate knowledge of the palace's internal structure and defensive systems. The sudden cessation of orbital bombardment after weeks of continuous fire created an ominous silence that Imperial defenders recognized as the prelude to the siege's final phase. Sensor readings from surviving monitoring stations detected massive energy fluctuations from the flagship of the traitor fleet, the Vengeful Spirit, as its void shields powered down in a display that could only represent either catastrophic damage or deliberate deactivation. Dorn's analysis of the tactical situation recognized that the shield deactivation represented either a trap designed to lure Imperial forces into a premature counterattack or a genuine opportunity that might not present itself again. The Vengeful Spirit's vulnerability created a narrow window for direct action against Horus himself, potentially ending the rebellion through targeted elimination of its primary leader, rather than continued attrition warfare that favored the numerically superior traitor forces. The Emperor's emergence from the palace's deepest levels coincided with the protection of the Vengeful Spirit's lowered shields. His decision to personally board the traitor flagship, representing the ultimate gambit in a war that had already consumed much of the galaxy. The teleportation assault would involve the Emperor, Dorn, and Sanguinius, representing the concentration of Imperial leadership in a single operation that would either achieve decisive victory or result in catastrophic defeat for the loyalist cause. Preparation for the teleportation assault required careful coordination of the palace's remaining technological resources while maintaining defensive operations that prevented enemy forces from detecting the planned operation. The teleportation systems had been damaged by weeks of bombardment and required extensive repairs and recalibration to ensure accurate transport across the void between Terra and the Vengeful Spirit's position in high orbit. Dorn's selection for the assault reflected both his tactical capabilities and his absolute reliability in critical situations, qualities that made him indispensable for an operation that would determine the war's outcome. His systematic approach to planning and execution provided essential balance to the Emperor's transcendent capabilities and Sanguinius' inspirational leadership, creating a command team that combined different strengths within a unified operational framework. The teleportation itself occurred during a brief window when enemy sensor coverage was disrupted by the ongoing orbital bombardment of Terra's surface, allowing the Imperial strike team to materialize aboard the Vengeful Spirit without immediate detection by the ship's security system. The flagship's interior had been modified since the beginning of the rebellion, with corridors and chambers that reflected the chaos corruption that had consumed the sons of Horus and their primarch. The initial advance through the ship's corridors revealed the extent to which Horus's flagship had been transformed by chaos influences, with architectural modifications that violated rational design principles, while incorporating symbols and decorative elements that seemed designed to disturb and disorient intruders. The ship's atmosphere carried scents and sounds that triggered psychological responses in even the Emperor's superhuman companions, requiring constant mental discipline to maintain focus on the mission's tactical objectives. The discovery of Sanguinius' broken form in the throne chamber of the Vengeful Spirit confirmed the worst fears about the angel's fate while revealing the full extent of Horus's transformation since his fall to chaos. The Primarch of the Blood Angels had fought with characteristic valor, but his wounds indicated that he had faced an opponent whose capabilities exceeded even his own legendary combat prowess. The sight of the angel's death provided grim evidence of what awaited the Emperor in his confrontation with his most favored son. The Emperor's condition following his battle with Horus defied immediate comprehension, his form bearing injuries that seemed to transcend physical damage, while his consciousness flickered between awareness and something approaching catatonia. Dorn's assessment of his father's wounds revealed damage that affected not only the Emperor's physical form, but also the psychic essence that had made him the master of humanity's destiny. The injuries suggested a confrontation that had involved forces beyond normal understanding, leaving the Emperor's survival uncertain despite his apparent victory over the traitor Warmaster. The retrieval of the Emperor's broken form from the Vengeful Spirit required immediate medical attention that exceeded the capabilities of conventional Imperial technology, while the tactical situation on Terra demanded continued military leadership that could coordinate the Loyalist response to Horus's death and the rebellion's potential collapse. Dorn found himself responsible for both his father's survival and the Imperium's continued existence, facing challenges that would test every aspect of his training and character in the crucial hours that would determine humanity's future. The Emperor's broken form lay within the most advanced medical facilities that Terra could provide, his condition defying every attempt at conventional treatment, while his consciousness flickered between moments of terrible clarity and periods of complete absence. The injuries sustained during his confrontation with Horus transcended physical damage, affecting the psychic essence that had sustained his millennia-long guidance of humanity. Imperial physicians and tech priests worked frantically to stabilize his condition, but their efforts could only slow the deterioration rather than reverse the fundamental damage that threatened to claim the master of mankind. Dorn stood vigil beside the Emperor's medical chamber, his methodical mind struggling to process the implications of his father's condition, while simultaneously coordinating the immediate response to Horus's death and the rebellion's sudden collapse. Reports from across the galaxy described traitor forces abandoning their positions or turning on each other as news of the War Master's defeat spread through astropathic networks. The systematic coordination that had characterized the rebellion dissolved into chaotic retreat as individual legion commanders pursued their own survival rather than continuing a war that had lost its central leadership. The Praetorian of Terra found himself bearing responsibilities that exceeded even his considerable capabilities, as the practical governance of the Imperium fell to him, while the Emperor's condition remained uncertain. The administrative apparatus that had managed humanity's expansion across the galaxy required constant oversight and decision-making authority that had previously resided solely with the Emperor himself. Dorn's systematic approach to military command proved essential for managing these civilian responsibilities, though the scope of the task demanded adaptations to his established methods and procedures. The immediate priority involved coordinating the pursuit of fleeing traitor forces while preventing their escape to regions where they might regroup and resume hostilities. Imperial fleet elements throughout the galaxy received orders to intercept retreating enemy formations, engaging them before they could reach safe havens or establish new bases of operations. The coordination required for these simultaneous operations across multiple sectors tested Imperial communication networks that had been damaged by years of warfare and systematic sabotage. Dorn's approach to the Great Scouring reflected his characteristic emphasis on systematic planning and methodical execution rather than the vengeful pursuit that some Imperial commanders advocated. His strategic framework prioritized the elimination of organized traitor resistance, while minimizing the resources expended on hunting scattered remnants that posed no immediate threat to Imperial security. This measured response frustrated officers who sought immediate retribution for the rebellion's devastation, but Dorn's analysis indicated that premature commitment of forces to pursuit operations might leave critical Imperial territories vulnerable to secondary threats. The coordination between different loyal legions during the scouring required careful attention to their varying approaches to warfare and justice. The Space Wolves under Leman Russ pursued fleeing traitors with characteristic ferocity, their hunt for Magnus and the Thousand Suns taking precedence over broader strategic considerations. The Dark Angels conducted their own mysterious operations that seemed focused on specific targets rather than general pursuit of enemy forces, while the Ultramarines worked to restore order and governance to worlds that had been devastated by the rebellion's passage. Imperial Fists companies participated in scouring operations throughout the galaxy, but their primary focus remained the reconstruction and fortification of critical Imperial territories, rather than offensive pursuit of enemy remnants. Dorn recognized that the rebellion's end created opportunities for other threats to emerge, requiring defensive preparations that could protect Imperial worlds from Xeno's incursions or renewed human rebellion. The systematic approach to post-war reconstruction became as important as the military operations that eliminated remaining traitor forces. The discovery of the extent to which chaos corruption had penetrated Imperial institutions during the rebellion created additional challenges that required careful investigation and systematic purging. Worlds that had remained nominally loyal throughout the conflict showed evidence of cult activity and demon worship that suggested the rebellion's influence had extended far beyond the openly traitorous legions. The identification and elimination of these corrupted elements required techniques and procedures that Imperial forces had never previously needed to develop. Malkador the Sigillite's declining health during the immediate post-war period placed additional burdens on Dorn's already overwhelming responsibilities. The ancient Psyker's efforts to maintain the Emperor's psychic project while managing the administrative apparatus of Imperial government had exhausted his considerable capabilities, leaving him increasingly unable to provide the guidance and support that had sustained Imperial operations throughout the Great Crusade and heresy. His eventual death created a void in Imperial leadership that could not be easily filled by existing personnel or institutions. The establishment of the Golden Throne as the Emperor's permanent life support system represented a technological achievement that pushed Imperial science to its absolute limits, while creating a situation that no one had anticipated or prepared for. The massive psychic amplification device required constant maintenance and monitoring, while consuming enormous amounts of energy and rare materials that strained Imperial logistics networks. The Emperor's entombment within this mechanical marvel ensured his survival, while fundamentally altering his relationship with the Imperium he had created. Dorn's psychological response to his father's condition manifested in an intensification of his already rigid adherence to duty and systematic approaches to problem solving. Primarch's emotional discipline, which had always been formidable, became almost mechanical as he focused entirely on practical responsibilities, while suppressing the grief and uncertainty that threatened to overwhelm his rational analysis of the situation. His interactions with other Imperial leaders became increasingly formal and procedural, reflecting his retreat into the structured frameworks that provided stability in an uncertain environment. The practical implications of the Emperor's incapacitation extended far beyond emotional considerations to encompass fundamental questions about Imperial governance and military command authority. The administrative systems that had managed the Great Crusade assumed direct oversight from the Emperor himself, requiring adaptations that could function without his constant guidance, while maintaining the efficiency and coordination that had characterized Imperial operations. Dorn found himself making decisions that affected billions of lives, while lacking the transcendent perspective that had guided his father's choices. The arrival of Roboute Guilliman on Terra with his proposals for the Codex Astartes created immediate tensions with Dorn's existing approaches to Legion organization and military doctrine. The Ultramarines Primarch's systematic analysis of the rebellion's causes included specific criticisms of the Legion system that had allowed individual commanders to accumulate sufficient power and resources to threaten the entire Imperium. His proposed reforms would fundamentally restructure Space Marine organizations while limiting their individual capabilities and autonomous authority. Dorn's initial response to the Codex proposals reflected his instinctive resistance to changes that might compromise military effectiveness for political considerations. The Imperial Fists had proven their loyalty throughout the rebellion, while maintaining the organizational structures and tactical doctrines that had made them effective defenders of Imperial interests. The suggestion that these proven systems required modification to prevent future rebellions implied criticism of approaches that had successfully resisted chaos corruption, while other legions had fallen to treachery and madness. The debates between Dorn and Guilliman over the Codex implementation revealed fundamental philosophical differences about the nature of military organization and the relationship between individual capability and institutional loyalty. Guilliman's systematic approach emphasized standardized procedures and distributed authority that would prevent any single commander from accumulating dangerous levels of power, while Dorn's perspective prioritized proven effectiveness and the specialized capabilities that had been developed through decades of combat experience. The practical implications of the proposed Legion restructuring extended beyond organizational charts to encompass questions about combat doctrine, recruitment procedures, and the preservation of accumulated tactical knowledge. The Imperial Fists had developed specialized techniques and institutional traditions that reflected their unique role as the Emperor's Praetorians and Terra's primary defenders. The division of the Legion into smaller chapters might preserve some of these capabilities, while eliminating others that required larger organizational structures to maintain and develop. Dorn's resistance to the Codex proposals intensified as their implementation timelines became more definite, creating tensions within the Imperial leadership that threatened to undermine the unity necessary for post-war reconstruction. His arguments against immediate restructuring emphasized the ongoing threats that required proven military capabilities rather than experimental organizational forms. The scouring operations continued to encounter organized traitor resistance that demanded coordinated responses by experienced formations rather than newly created chapters with limited operational history. The Iron Cage incident represented the culmination of Dorn's psychological struggle with the new order that was emerging from the rebellion's counterattack. His decision to lead the Imperial Fists into Perdurabo's trap reflected both his desire to prove his Legion's continued relevance and his need to find some form of resolution to the guilt and frustration that had accumulated during the post-war period. The systematic nature of the trap suggested that his brother had understood these psychological pressures and exploited them with characteristic precision. The casualties sustained during the Iron Cage operation forced Dorn to confront the reality that his resistance to change had endangered the very Legion he sought to preserve. The Imperial Fists who died in Perdurabo's killing fields represented irreplaceable experience and genetic heritage that could not be recovered through recruitment or training. The tactical lessons of the engagement demonstrated that traditional approaches to warfare might be inadequate for the threats that would emerge in the post-heresy galaxy. Dorn's eventual acceptance of the Codex Astartes reflected his recognition that institutional survival required adaptation to changing circumstances rather than rigid adherence to established procedures. The division of the Imperial Fists into the successor chapters represented a fundamental transformation of his life's work, while ensuring that essential capabilities and traditions would survive in modified forms. The process required careful attention to preserving critical knowledge and maintaining operational continuity during the transition period.
I can make it back.
The establishment of the Imperial Fists chapter as the primary successor organization allowed Dorn to maintain direct oversight of Terra's defense, while adapting to the reduced scope of authority that the Codex system imposed. The chapter's continued responsibility for the Imperial Palace and Sol system provided continuity with their traditional role, while demonstrating compliance with the new organizational requirements. The selection of personnel for leadership positions within the new structure required careful evaluation of individual capabilities and institutional loyalty. The creation of successor chapters from Imperial Fists, Gene Seed, involved complex decisions about the distribution of specialized knowledge and equipment that had accumulated during the Legion's history. The Black Templars received authorization to maintain crusading fleets that could respond to threats throughout the galaxy, while the Crimson Fists established fortress monasteries that continued the tradition of systematic defensive warfare. Each successor organization inherited specific aspects of the parent Legion's capabilities, while developing their own institutional identity and tactical specializations. Dorn's role as the senior Imperial Fist during the transition period required him to balance competing demands from successor chapter leaders who sought to preserve different aspects of the Legion's heritage while adapting to their new circumstances. The coordination between chapters needed to maintain some degree of unified purpose while respecting their individual autonomy and specialized missions. The establishment of communication networks and mutual support agreements created informal structures that preserved essential coordination capabilities, despite formal organizational separation. The psychological impact of the Emperor's entombment continued to influence Dorn's behavior and decision-making throughout the transition period, manifesting in an increasingly rigid adherence to established procedures and resistance to any changes that might compromise proven capabilities. His visits to the Golden Throne became ritualized observances that provided structure and continuity in an environment where traditional certainties had been fundamentally altered. The one-sided conversations with his catatonic father served as a form of confession and consultation that helped him process the enormous responsibilities he continued to bear. The gradual acceptance of his new role as chapter master rather than Legion Primarch required Dorn to develop different approaches to leadership and strategic planning that reflected the reduced scope of his authority while maintaining the effectiveness that had characterized his previous service. The transition from commanding tens of thousands of Space Marines to directing a single chapter demanded modifications to his systematic approach to military organization while preserving the essential principles that had made the Imperial Fists effective defenders of Imperial interests. The years following the Emperor's entombment upon the Golden Throne witnessed Dorn's increasing isolation within the emerging Imperial hierarchy, as his rigid adherence to pre-heresy organizational structures placed him at odds with the systematic reforms that Roboute Guilliman championed throughout the recovering Imperium. The Ultramarines Primarch's Codex Astartes represented more than mere military reorganization. It embodied a fundamental philosophical shift away from the concentrated power structures that had enabled the heresy's devastating scope. Where Dorn saw proven effectiveness and institutional loyalty, Guilliman perceived dangerous vulnerabilities that required immediate correction through enforced standardization and distributed authority. The debates between the two Primarchs intensified as Guilliman's reforms gained support from other surviving Loyalist commanders, who recognized the political necessity of preventing future large-scale rebellions. The Imperial Fist's Legion's exemplary record during the heresy could not overcome the broader strategic argument that concentrated military power in individual commanders created unacceptable risks for Imperial security.
This thing's so disgusting.
Dorn found himself defending not merely his Legion's organizational structure, but the entire concept of specialized military formations that had evolved to meet specific strategic requirements during the Great Crusade. The practical implications of the proposed restructuring extended far beyond administrative convenience to encompass fundamental questions about military effectiveness and institutional memory. The Imperial Fists had developed specialized siege techniques, fortification methodologies, and defensive doctrines that required large-scale coordination and extensive training programs to maintain their effectiveness. The division of these capabilities among smaller chapter-sized formations might preserve individual elements while eliminating the integrated systems thinking that had made the Legion's defensive networks so formidable. Dorn's resistance to the Codex implementation reflected his deep understanding of how military organizations developed and maintained their specialized capabilities over extended periods. The Imperial Fist's expertise in siege warfare had evolved through decades of practical experience, with lessons learned in each campaign being incorporated into training protocols and tactical doctrines that were passed down through the Legion's institutional structure. The proposed chapter system might maintain some of these traditions while losing the comprehensive approach that had made them effective against the most sophisticated enemy fortifications. The growing tension between institutional preservation and political necessity created psychological pressures that manifested in Dorn's increasingly rigid behavior and his retreat into the structured routines that provided stability amid fundamental change. His daily visits to the Golden Throne became extended vigils where he reported on Imperial Fist's activities while seeking guidance from the Emperor's silent form. These one-sided conversations served as both confession and consultation, allowing him to process the enormous responsibilities he continued to bear while maintaining connection to the authority that had originally defined his purpose. The arrival of intelligence reports describing Iron Warrior's activity in the Sebastus system created an opportunity that seemed to offer resolution to the mounting pressures surrounding the Codex implementation. Perdurabo's forces had established a massive fortress complex on the world of Sebastus IV, their construction activities suggesting preparation for extended operations that might threat Imperial shipping routes and nearby compliance worlds. The fortress represented exactly the type of challenge that suited Imperial Fist's capabilities, requiring systematic analysis and coordinated siege operations that demonstrated the continued relevance of Legion-scale military formations. Dorn's decision to respond to the Sebastus threat reflected both strategic necessity and personal psychology, as the prospect of engaging his brother in the type of warfare that had defined their rivalry during the Great Crusade provided a welcome alternative to the political maneuvering that characterized post-heresy imperial politics. The Iron Warriors had always represented the Imperial Fist's closest equivalent among the legions. Their shared expertise in siege warfare created.
This holiday season, there's no escaping family.
Ella, your father's here.
Why?
When we haven't seen each other.
What is it called? I don't want to use page. Okay, bro. Default F, apparently. It's not F. What the heck? Bro, they need to stop freaking resetting the stupid keybites every single time they update the game. I don't even know they just reset everything. Like, come on. Is it V? It is V. There it is. That's a stupid one. Yes. This is confusing. That's okay. This thing has no recoil even though. Yeah, for that 50-meter one, I'm probably gonna need. This is already probably gonna be my favorite gun. Let's fry with it now. What the? Okay, got a call, then they hung up.
Fucking shit!
I think I ate that bomb from my guy.
Fuck!
How is this going to be able to spawn? Snipers. Aim is bad. Jeez, man. Incredible. Game. Jeez. Not good gameplay again. I dare say it's bad gameplay.
Fuck this!
Oh. Up there. Ah, unfortunate. Did he kill me twice? How? Wait, where did I die last time? Across the map, sure. Take up me. Come on. Oh wow. Look that big boy. Look at those big boys. What the? Wait. Way too heavy. He got 10 people now. Interesting. I was brain absent right there. I do fine. Change that. No, my point. Not more. I think it's a mining board. Oh, okay. In the most just out there place. It's not even hiding in. Gosh. Made it even hiding. I'm gonna take out these mines first. Yeah, right. Fine. Why is that so behind? Wait a minute. There we go. Clearly. Sometimes just I've been looking for that guy that entire time. I see him once. And I see him.
Let's take this objective!
Ah, the classic. The classic. So strong. That's a claymore, and I didn't set it off. That's another claymore. That's an enemy man. That's another one. They just keep coming. Maybe behind me. Okay, turns around. Oh, dude, come on. You serious? Just have no pushing power. They're just taking these points and GG's.
You're gonna make it! Hold on! Let's move!
Okay. Oh, my points are gone. Because I'm indeed fighting for points. And what is that?
Drone frag!
Ah, shh. Bad aim, man. I don't know why, but aiming the shotgun just feels so bad. Looked not there. Not unfortunate. One there. Oh, are you serious? Of course.
Get down!
It didn't say. Unless I didn't see it, but I'm pretty sure it did not tell me that a man ran into the point.
Stay with me!
And I died because of that.
I'm done! Let's go! I'm here!
I keep strafing left and right and I miss all. And then dude, that's so close range, and
Stay with me!
of course the balloon just absolutely destroys every single gun it touches.
Enemy swarming all around!
Thank you. Thank you.
Enemy helicopter down!
We should go over the claymore. I didn't see. I missed. I couldn't move my mouse enough.
Medic!
Ah, shh. My timing is just horrendous.
Drone frag! Frag away!
Oh, that grenade, that grenade, that grenade. Nice, restarted. See, I thought I was recalling. Indeed not recalling.
Need ammo! I'm fucking right! Grab what you can!
I need to be supply friends. Give me a second. Oh, the back side.
Grab this spare ammo! Let's move!
I owe you one! Taking fire!
Almost got it. Never actually.
Over here! Take it!
Oh, jeez. Ah, hit again. Stupid ass. I get by a tank, stops my healing, I lose. Get the kill somehow. I have one bullet. Why is there so much ammo? Wait, did I click my game? Why do I suddenly have so much ammo? Oh. Sperm, man. Creatures. Yep. Perfect spawn. To snipe. My god, it's gone. Take my gun. There is ammo. Oh my goodness.
Who can spare some rounds?
Where's that ammo?
Who's got spare rounds?
Take this ammo!
I don't really know what to do. After I face the image as sniper? Sniper something? Like no. No, it's just not that. minute.
We need to hold the area.
I am on top now. Okay. Got another one. Ammo time, ammo time. Retreat. Stim and retreat. Winner. Winner. Sorry. Smooched you guys in there. Holy. Still got smoked. I hate this one. I do this one today. Took B, did I take B? How did they take B and C? What, they didn't take it somehow? Are you serious? Teammate. That throw was crazy.
I need a medic!
Oh, no, he died. Dang. That's saving me. 2 times now, just from behind. Such bad gameplay. need to also push. That would have been embarrassing. Okay, what was it? Jeez, man, there's just dudes flying at me. Ah, shit. It started already. The undefendable thing. Oh my goodness. Would I explode this weapon? Explode. Heard anything right there. Oh, really bad, really bad, really bad aim, really bad. I'm gonna go retreat.
I need some ammo. Who's got spares?
Interesting. The undefendable. My favorite objective. And why this map is so skewed one way. There are just some objectives that are just so undefendable. And
I'm dry! I'm dry! Need ammo!
Someone.
Who can spare some ammo? I'm out!
I have to find a way to touch it. I hate this game. Yeah, bro, I have almost less bullets. Oh. What is that? That is not what I thought that was.
I need fucking ammo!
Like this, where is it? Oh. What is happening? What is happening there? Where was it? Oh, salt.
I'm dry! Need ammo!
Trying the ammo. Ammo, please. Ammo, please. I don't have ammo to fight. Ammo. 9 bullets. Okay.
Who's got spare ammo? I'm out!
Bro, there's no way this is real. It has ammo. Well, I did get a kill with 2 bullets. I lost ammo.
Who can spare some ammo? I'm out!
No one plays ammo. Surely there's some ammo here. Yeah. Oh.
I'm dry! Need ammo!
Ammo. No! Killed right when I found it. Let's stick it instead. Let's see. There's one to think about. There's some folk thinking the same thing I think. 1 health, bro. Dang. Oh, he was behind the rock. No. Bro, how crazy is that? As soon as I left, instantly lost everything. We serious? That was illegal gameplay. Yeah. I'm losing everything because I decided. I shot right above his body. I know I shot right above his body. I put every single pellet into the concrete, the blocks behind them. We lost every point. This is not a team death, you know, man. This is just sad. But this side of the map is so bad. Dang. That was just a bad angle. Fighting this is so not worth it.
Let's go!
Oh. Shot from behind, shot from behind. Wait, is this a team death? No way, right? I feel like my team is doing I do have to put that serious. This side of the map just is so bad. And I hate pushing this, like this sucks. Helicopter. It's not something, man. It's one thing or another. There's just two guys completely tearing us apart, which means we can't take team B. Our team is not able to take C. They can hold it, I should say. They take it sometimes, but then they can hold it till Physically easier. What is everyone doing? Thank you. Freaking useless.
That's it. Nice fucking work. Secure the objective.
We do have. Where? On the roof. Thank you. I have to spawn. Timmy doesn't see you. You can spawn on the point. Like seriously. I'm very tilted when I don't spawn on the point. Missed points again. Dang. That was the fastest. What the? There's someone broken. just a lot. Just break it. Oh, I have ammo. Nice. I want this guy. I should never aim with this.
Stupid.
Back shots. What the? I don't know if you saw what I
Really? Cool. Fuck!
There we go. My arm is itching and it's very hard to move around.
Fuck you.
I'll get you. Dang, level 100. He's a gamer.
Stop it!
Shit. That's what we got, like quad cap. Where is my Oh my word. These guys were getting iced by now. Simply happens. It's 5:30. What shall I do? I think we can stop for today. Got a lot done. Got some good games. I basically learned a new map at this point. A thermal site. Wait, that's so cool. I think it's about the same. Recoil. It will give me an edge in fights though. So I like it. I also got that. Get my muzzle back on. Oh yeah, the mouse is perfect. I understand that this is a thermal sight and that this is a range, but that stuff needs to be lit up to actually, you know, so you tell what it does. No 22. That doesn't have. Holy moly. You really need to play the shotgun to really get it loaded up. And it doesn't matter, not that matter. Obviously the light will help a lot. Basically none of these also matter. Wow. That could be cool. Yeah. Could be cool. Definitely not that cool right now. That's the end of that. Okay, bye.